There we go. All right, guys, welcome back. It's Tech Talk Tuesday. Oh, we're off last week due to some minor modifications to the studio. The art isn't back up yet. It's a little bit echoey in here because the paintings aren't there. The dampening of the vibrations has changed, and so we must adjust. So thanks, guys, for coming to hang out. We have a pretty cool little show tonight. At least I think it's pretty cool. To start off, there's a pretty incredible video about the developments of Unreal 5 engine, which is essentially a construct for creating, whether it's games or CGI content, movies, cartoons, at all. And some of the innovations in it are truly incredible, especially if you're someone who has like loosely followed computer animation over the years and understands some of like the technical limitations or some of the technical challenges, especially when trying to mimic things like real world light computationally. It's been very difficult to do, and so there's been some really big evolutions in technology that are now allowing us to do some incredible things. So we're going to talk about Unreal Engine 5. I'm going to show you guys this cool clip about how technology like that is being used in Hollywood. Disney uses it for The Mandalorian. I'm pretty sure also the Book of Boba Fett as well. And then we're going to do a little bit of looking into some interesting developments in AI. Great new video by Cold Fusion. Petering into some conversations around what cyber warfare is. And then we're going to start an interview. It's 4 hours long. I don't think we're going to watch the whole thing tonight. We're definitely going to watch the beginning of this ex-cyber criminal, Brett Johnson. And I think it's going to be very interesting, spawn a lot of fascinating conversation on sort of the cyber warfare topology and what's going on in the world. So I'm really excited to dive into that. So to get us started, we're going to watch this really cool video on 5 reasons Unreal Engine is a big deal. And so there are many innovations in the new engine that allow it to sort of not only just outperform its predecessors, but open up new possibilities in terms of what is doable in the game space. One of the mods of this channel, a friend of ours, does video game design. There's a lot more about this than I do. I'd be super curious to see as this starts to evolve to get him to come on and talk a little bit more about it. But anyway, I'm going to let the video at least start to do most of the talking while I try and pull up another video that we're going to need for after this. Here we go.
Unreal Engine 5 was just released this morning, and it is a game changer. The computer graphic industry will never be the same. Everyone from game developers to movie makers are excited to start using Unreal Engine 5. But you're probably wondering why Unreal Engine 5 is such a big deal. Well, in this video, I'm going to go over 5 reasons why Unreal Engine 5 is a game changer. Number 1 is Unreal's brand new lighting system called Lumen.
Okay, this is fucking sick, by the way. Extremely sick.
Since the start of computer graphics, developers have been trying to simulate global illumination. Essentially, global illumination is bounce lighting, which is the extra light that is created from light rays bouncing off of different surfaces. For example, if we have a room with just one light source, which is the window, it doesn't make sense for the room to be pitch black. Instead, light rays from the window will bounce off of the floors and walls to illuminate the entire room indirectly. Movies have been able to use bounce lighting for a while now through the process called path tracing, but it can take a very long time for just a single frame to render. Sometimes these renders can even last for hours.
So back in the day, I was friends with my neighbor. His dad worked for the government, and as a result had access to like crazy technology, especially even at that time, like very high-end Macintosh computers that were capable of doing crazy 3D rendering. And I remember like he made these like hover tank like CGI sort of models. And I got excited, like, oh, can we use your computer? He's like, no, we can't use the computer. It's busy rendering. I'm like, how long is it be running for? He's like, oh, it's going to be running for 4 days. I'm like, we can't use the computer for 4 days? And like, how much is it rendering? That one frame is going to take. So the fact that we've gone from like days to hours is impressive. But again, some of the shit's so fucking cool.
Obviously, this makes it hard to use for video games that require 30 to 120 frames rendered every second. To get around this in the past, game developers have faked global illumination through a process called light baking. Essentially, all the path tracing was rendered before the game is played. This render is then stored in a texture called a light map, which is then overlaid on top of the world to make it look like light is bouncing around in real time, when in reality it's just a pre-rendered texture. But now the problem is that global illumination is not real time. So as soon as I make a change, our light map is no longer in sync. So we have to rebake the entire environment all over again, which is time consuming. This is why Lumen is such a big deal, since it's true real-time global illumination. So right here we have the same scene, but Lumen is turned on, so there is no baked lighting. And notice how as soon as I start to move this chair around, the light updates in real time.
Okay, so that's like pretty cool. Like that's pretty cool that you can do incredibly smooth real time like lighting changes like that, but it gets like even a level up here in a second.
We can even play with how much light is coming through the window dynamically. So let's add in a cube, and we can scale this up and slowly start to block off all the light in the room. And then notice how as soon as I move this, we start to seep in more and more light, and this room is entirely dynamically changing its visibility.
So, what is really impressive to me about this technology versus something like light mapping is it is significantly more like dynamic and closer to reality. So, like, we have way like that's why when you see you're like, oh my god, that looks so real because there's your brain doesn't have any of that uncanny valley weirdness. It's like, oh, what is that? Like it doesn't look right. When you see this, you're like, yeah, that looks pretty fucking perfect. It's just about right.
Because of all of that bounce lighting, which was near impossible in Unreal Engine 4. The city sample shows off Lumen pretty well. I can rotate my sun and watch all those buildings illuminate each other through their bounce lighting. Even windows on buildings now give off light. For example, if I grab this car and move it from the window, it starts to cast soft shadows onto the concrete. Reason 2 is nanite. Every object you see in CGI, whether that be in video games or movies, are comprised of tiny flat planes of geometry called polygons. And generally, the more polygons you have in a world, the longer it takes for your computer to render, which can slow down video games. This is why games use a system called a level of detail, or LOD for short. Basically,
so if you've ever played this, like I see this all the time when I play Warzone, Call of Duty with my friends, you will use a scope to zoom in on something, and as you zoom, everything for a second will look very blurry, and then all of a sudden will pop in with like really good detail. That is the level of detail playing out in the field.
Further away an object is from the camera, the less polygons it will use to render that object. This makes games run faster since there's less polygons that have to be rendered, but it's a time-consuming process to create all the LODs. Nanite changes this. At a simple level, Nanite allows for dynamic level of detail. This means you can have an object with millions of polygons without any LODs, because those polygons dynamically deform, lowering the total amount of polys on the object. This allows for high poly assets made for movies to be used in video games now. I think it's best to show an example of why this is a big deal. So right in front of you is a donut I made.
The best way to kind of like, at least the way that I sort of interpolate this is it gives an incredible level of like compression. So it's able to show you the appropriate amount of polygons at whatever level of detail without actually losing any loss. It's like a lossless encoder.
In Unreal Engine, and this donut is made up of about 30,000 different polygons. Here is that same exact donut, but copied and pasted over 100,000 times.
So 100,000 times 30,000, what is that? Like 300 million or a couple billion or something? Polygons in this screen now that it can dynamically scale in and out of as it needs to.
And what is insane is that we're not faking any of these donuts with textures or billboards. All these donuts are individual objects.
Which also allows you the opportunity to have more dynamic lighting and more realistic lighting. Because again, if things are like just texture maps or they're not like real objects in the environment, it's more difficult to light them, is my understanding at least.
That we can move around, rotate, and scale.
Incredible. And then
maybe
it casts shadows
is
on
bigger
things.
than all the others. A more practical example is the city sample. which is made up entirely of nanite objects. We can see how nanite works by coming up to lit, down to nanite visualization, and triangles. So every color you see is an individual polygon.
Wow.
And we can see more polygons pop in the closer we get to one of the buildings
Yeah.
or to any of those objects. For example, this water tower, if I go away, we can see that the water tower loses polys, but when I come up close,
It's a bad
gains
example. It
more and
doesn't
more
really.
polys. Number 3 is the Megascans asset library. What is the point of great features like nanite and
This is very
lumen
cool,
if we don't have any objects to populate our world with? This is where Megascans can help us. Megascans is a library of over 16,000 assets ready to be used automatically and
So this is all another thing too, is like traditionally in like if you're in a video game studio, or if you're even just like someone who's producing, you know, CGI, you're building like all of the assets and all of the things from scratch. You need a chair, you have to like build that fucking chair. But or you know, you could buy asset packs and stuff. But this online web store is like a game changer. It opens up so many possibilities for creators to get access to like really decent like CGI assets, and then they can take those and like fuck with them and tweak them and kind of make them their own. It's super fascinating.
Unreal Engine 5. These assets include 3D objects, plants.
Actually, I want to. We're probably gonna be doing a lot of sidebarring today. Resident Evil 7 photo scan. I want to see if there's a. I think there was a video on. Let's see if I can find it. No. So there was basically like when they did the Resident Evil 7 game, they used this thing called like photogrammy, I think, where they actually went out and like took pictures of things obviously in the real world and used those as like bases for their texture maps, etc. Okay, I can't find it, so wait, this might be it.
光の計測用に白い板を16枚撮影します。
Does this have?
次に素材を16枚撮
It
影し
doesn't
ま
have
す。
captions, unfortunately. Okay, never mind. I'll try and find out what Wikibot
Material
is.
surfaces, modular objects, and recently they even added customizable trees. And all these objects are photorealistic because they're scanned from real life. The team at Megascans have flew all over the world, from Japan to Iceland, scanning and capturing different objects and surfaces. Using a program called Reality Capture, these scans are then converted into 3D objects and imported into Unreal. They have been used in movies and TV shows like The Lion King and Mandalorian. What's amazing is that all these assets are free and built into Unreal Engine 5 by default. To get Megascans, all you have to do is click on the add button right here and select Quixel Bridge. Now we get access to those 16,000 assets. So for example, what if we want a rock from the desert? Well, I'm going to select 3D assets to filter for objects and type in desert and then rock. So we see all the different assets that we can choose from. Let's say, for example, maybe I want this asset right here. All you have to do is drag it into your world, wait for it to download, and now we have that object ready to move around and place in our world. They even give us a lot of customizable features, such as changing the color of the rock, or we can even make the rock a lot shinier. So let's get a better angle.
So to contrast this here, I found a video. This is all, it's in Japanese, so I don't think, and there's no English subtitles, but this is the photogrammetry. Is that how you pronounce that? Sure. But it gives a good demonstration of how they took photographs of different objects and textures to bring those into the game under like different lighting conditions, right? So here's like cardboard or some like goop. Again, they would take like different materials like dirt, hair, carpet, take photographs of different depth of light so that they could build those textures. They want to grow stuff like hair. I even think they took pictures of things of like rotting garbage and like putrescence because they really wanted that vibe in the game. And then when they can bring that into the engine, they can take those assets and manipulate it. But if you're a video game creator, you need a lot. Like, they invented this like new process to do this, and like you need a significant budget to buy the cameras, build the software, have the like appropriate people to sort of string all of that together. And that's why something is as powerful as Unreal Engine 5 or even previous versions, right, that have like similar asset libraries. But just the fact that you have all of that stuff at your fingertips is like truly incredible.
Sun is hitting it right here by adjusting its max roughness. So maybe this rock is really wet, so it's really shiny. In fact, this environment I created is almost made up entirely of Megascan assets. From the houses to the foliage, all the way to the cliffs at the very far back, they are all from the library. Also, the desert from the Valley of the Ancients demo is entirely made up of Megascan assets. You can pretty much click anywhere on the screen, and odds are you have selected a real-life object that was scanned from the deserts of Utah. Reason number 4 is metahumans. Humans are one of the hardest assets to create for games and movies, especially if you're trying to create realistic humans. It is one of the most expensive parts of any production.
So what freaks me out about this, and before we get into like the like we get into what the technical capabilities of this is, there's a great website that I love talking about on stream from time to time called This Person Does Not Exist. And you can just refresh these images. And these are literally generated by an AI. And they are indistinguishable from like a human being. Like when you see this, you're like, wow, like this is quite incredible that it can just spin up a fake person, in the blink of an eye. So the idea of being able to generate photographs of celebrities is quite well. We watched a YouTube video of 2-minute papers, about how NVIDIA has kind of added this. There's a game changer in terms of their ability to now animate those photos. There's a new algorithm that they use here. I'll show you. It's a super quick video. So let me see if I can find it. Here, there you go. Boom. This is not old. I don't want the old one. I want. Sorry, I swear to God, I'll find it. This is it. So, faces,
This
cool.
is Stargan 2, a technique that appeared in December of 2019. It is a neural network-based learning algorithm that is capable of synthesizing these eye-poppingly detailed images of human beings that don't even exist. This is all synthetic. It also supports a cool feature where we can give it a photo, then it embeds this image into a latent space, and in this space we can easily apply modifications to it. Okay,
It's crazy, right?
what is this latent space
I
thing?
wish they didn't use his face.
A
but
latent
whatever.
space is a made-up place where we are trying to organize data in a way that similar things are close to each other. In our earlier work, we were looking to generate hundreds of variants of a material model to populate this scene. In this latent space, we can concoct all of these really cool digital material models. A link to this work is available in the video description. Stargan uses walks in a similar latent space to create these human faces and animate them. So, let's see that. When we take a walk in the internal latent space of this technique, we can generate animations. Let's see how Stargan 2 does this. It is a true miracle that a computer can generate images like this.
So it can make a person, like a generative person, and then move them around in that animation. But conceptually, as well as it could take a regular photograph of a person, right, and then start to animate. So you can see the Stalgan 2 is decent. It has a really hard time locking in certain features. Like you'll notice, like hair
However,
moves
wait a
around in really
second.
weird places.
Look closely.
Like his beard.
Did you notice it?
Yeah, we noticed
Something is not right here.
it. So here, let's
Don't
skip
despair
to.
if not. It is hard to pin down what the exact
Here,
into
we're
your
gonna skip to-
papers, and let's see the new method. Holy mother of papers! Do you see what I see here? The sticky beards are a thing of the past, and
It's
facial
still
landmarks are
it still has a hard time, right? It's not 100%, but like it is a massive
allowed to
improvement.
fly about freely. And not only that, but the results are much smoother and more consistent to the point that it can not only generate photorealistic images of virtual humans. Come on.
So this is like all just done via like AI. So never mind having a powerful like face generating technology layered onto that.
This is why MetaHumans is amazing. It allows us to quickly create realistic humans in minutes, and the application runs on your computer browser, so you don't need to download Unreal Engine to use it. It also comes with a bunch of different preset humans. This is one of the preset humans. You can see that we have just a bunch of options at the left right here. We could go in and sculpt, maybe give him a bigger nose, and also raise the cheekbones. And then we could go into the head, give him different hair, and maybe even add in a mustache. And of course, change the proportions, maybe make him a little bit skinnier. Of course, we could continue using MetaHuman Creator, but what if we want to bring the human into UE5? Well, it's as easy as opening up Bridge and going into the MetaHuman tab, and under My MetaHumans, you see all the humans you have created. All you have to do is simply download that character and import it into your game. Once you do have it imported, you just have to find where he is under MetaHuman and simply drag it out. It is that easy now to create a realistic human for games and animation. But we're not just limited to a static human. We can animate pretty much everything about this MetaHuman, including his face. So for example, what if you want to move his mouth down? Just grab it like that, move it. You can also move his eyes, so you can see him looking in game. And keep in mind, all of these are animatable, so you could create an entire animation. We can even change his body's pose. So we can raise arms, and maybe try to animate him waving if you are good with that.
And again, what's crazy about these engines too is that they have like physics embedded in them as well, right? So there's not even like just the physics of the way that the light is bouncing, but there's physics of gravity, and even more to an extent, material physics, right? Like how well it's able to simulate things like sand going through an hourglass or ice melting or something like that.
Animation. The Matrix Unreal Engine 5 demo is a great example of the power of metahumans. All the humans, from the player character to the pedestrians walking the street, are metahumans. Even Keanu Reeves is a customized metahuman. Instead of using the metahuman application, artists scan Keanu Reeves' face and then use the metahuman technology for the materials, rigging, and animation. So if you are a technical artist, you can still make use of metahuman in a more traditional pipeline. You're not just limited to what is possible in the MetaHuman editor. Number 5 is surprisingly Unreal Engine 4. You probably noticed that what you see on the screen right now is not Unreal Engine 5. This is a demo of Unreal Engine 4 that was released in 2012, which is a decade ago. The reason why I'm showing this is to demonstrate that UE4 projects can easily be converted into UE5 projects. Now, this is the same demo, but running in Unreal Engine 5, making use of all the new features, such as Lumen and Nanites. So it looks a lot better than it did in 2012. The reason why this is important is because all the content created for UE4 is still relevant and
I thought there was going to be a contrast or comparison
tutorials
there.
or asset packs. There's already an existing and thriving Unreal ecosystem. For example, there are over 10,000 different asset packs you can buy right now on the Unreal Marketplace, and almost all of them can be converted to UE5. Not to mention a lot of these assets are free, and new free content is being added every month. Also, almost all tutorials created for Unreal Engine 4 still apply to Unreal Engine 5, which is great for me because that means all my past videos are still relevant. For example, if you want to learn how to create a donut in Unreal Engine, then all you have to do is watch this Unreal Engine 4 video, and it still works for Unreal Engine 5. And if you want to learn Unreal Engine 5, then luckily you are in the right place. I have a free 5-hour-long beginner tutorial, which you can watch right now, link in the description below. We go over everything from the basics of Unreal to creating a beautiful environment like the one you see right here. Feel free to check it out if you are interested in learning Unreal. Thousands of people have already completed that course and have started their Unreal journey through it. Also, since UE5 has now officially released, I have a bunch of content, videos, and assets planned for this channel. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe and press the bell icon for notifications. With all that being said, I hope to see you in future videos.
All right, very sick. I've had a Interesting little, excuse me, camera malfunction here. Not a huge deal. We're gonna take actually, I don't think we need to take a detour here. We can just keep going. This video here, I have not pre-watched, and I'm actually very excited to watch with you guys. It's on the rise of AI companions. It's Cold Fusion, one of my absolute favorite YouTubers of all time. Please show them some love. I'm gonna let him do most of the talking while I try and check out my camera here.
This video is brought to you by Morning Brew. Hi, welcome to another episode of Cold Fusion, where I cover anything in science, technology, business, or history. For over a century, science fiction writers have explored the concept of artificial intelligence. As far back as 1872, an author by the name of Samuel Butler raised questions of conscious machines in his novel, Erewhon. Since then, our imaginations have evolved alongside our technological advancements. What if machines could feel empathy for us, care for us, or even fall in love with us? And more importantly, what if we grew to reciprocate those feelings? Of course, this was purely the stuff of science fiction, but as we firmly enter the 2020s, something interesting is beginning to happen. The ability of AI algorithms to mimic human relationships is getting close enough to approximating actual relationships, to some degree at least. This is colloquially called an AI companion. Let's explore the idea of AI companions, from its origins in media to the technology that actually exists today. It's an interesting concept, and this episode may make you just think a little bit.
So what my immediate thoughts here, at least, particularly around like AI chatbots and how much the GPT-3 language has improved their ability to, have realistic conversations with people. There have been some like pretty incredible and like daunting advancements in the technology and this stuff, particularly around just like, again, like conversational AI, right? Or AI that are able to communicate or satisfy certain wants or needs from people. So the fact that there is this like new underlying protocol that's so good at having conversations with people, coupled with a lot of interesting technology companies trying to learn how to leverage that in hopefully positive ways. Like, I think obviously there's a lot of room for use and abuse, but theoretically there could be an enormous number of benefits of being able to create sort of machine social entities.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
When the movie Her debuted in 2013, audiences were enamored by a story of a man recovering from heartbreak, finding love once again. But the twist was, this new love was an artificially intelligent operating system. In essence, it wanted audiences to question how they would respond to this future. Again, in 2013, the sci-fi anthology series Black Mirror released an episode titled Be Right Back. It tells the story of Martha, a woman who was devastated by the death of her fiancé in a car accident. Martha signs up for a service that digitally recreates loved ones in the form of AI. It takes its form based on social media communications. Interestingly, in 2021, Microsoft patented technology that would use social media posts to reincarnate people in text form. It would use personal conversations and posts made on social media for training data. It would learn how that person speaks and mimic hypothetical new conversations. The basic idea is that the AI would learn that personality and then clone it. Here's a quote via Forbes from the Microsoft patent. Quote, "The specific person who the chatbot represents may correspond to a past or present entity or version thereof, such as a friend, a relative, an acquaintance, a celebrity, a fictional character, a historical figure, a random entity, etc." In the Black Mirror episode, Martha begins to get frustrated by the small ways that the AI fails to replicate the real thing, and eventually it leads to a tragic end. The beauty of both Black Mirror and Her, much
See how
unlike
long this
films
lasts.
such as Blade Runner and AI for example, is the setting of a not too distant future. It's so close to reality that it behaves as its own unique uncanny valley, a sort of liminal space and time. In the case of artificially intelligent companions, the future has come to fruition faster than some might have anticipated. This became evident when the world was introduced to Roman Mazurenko, a deceased man that was turned into a chatbot that inspired the now popular Replica app.
I wonder if we
What's
should
both
try this out.
fascinating and unsettling about the story of Replica is how it's not only similar to the Black Mirror episode, but was actually inspired by it. San Francisco-based Luca, the company behind Replica, was founded by Eugenia Kuda in 2014. Luca specialized in chatbots, the most successful being a program that made restaurant reservations. In late 2015, Eugenia's best friend, Roman Mazurenko, was hit by a car, and sadly, he passed away. As Eugenia grieved, she found comfort in rereading the text messages between her and Roman. Devastated by the tragedy of missing her friend, she was struck with an idea. Instead of making chatbots for a specific task, one could create a bot based on a specific person. So with this idea in mind, she got to work.
At the time, I was 29, so for me it was the first kind of meaningful death in my life. We're still in our 20s or early 30s, and it still felt like it was just really, really abrupt, I'd say. Something changed me so much in such a short period of time that I could just see really, really clearly what mattered or what not. Well, I definitely saw that whatever I was doing at work didn't matter at all. And some other things. And it was just this big realization, this very, very clear vision of what life's about.
Using 8,000 lines of text from their conversations, Eugenia set about creating a digital representation of Roman. She inputted all the messages into a program that had previously been used for chatbots. And with this, her lost friend was reincarnated into a chatbot. Eugenia would write to Roman, and it would respond in ways that the real Roman would when he was alive. She soon thought the app would be good enough to be made public so that other people could speak to Roman. What Eugenia quickly realized is that other people found the experience of speaking with him as therapeutic as she did. And this sparked her next big idea. What if she could create a way for people to build their own digital companions based on their wants and needs? During the process, Eugenia discovered that programming an AI to converse about open-ended topics like relationships and feelings.
So, what we know about AI and the way that certain algorithms are tuned, this instantly obviously raises like red flags and concerns in my head. Mostly just because of who watches the watchers, like who programs and controls these AI and how they can potentially manipulate your interests, but also what do they key in on it? What are the vectors of your actual happiness and positive mental health? Is it just giving you a dopamine kick of attention and someone gratifying certain needs and making you feel good about yourself for really vain pursuits? Or is it something that gives you a deep sense of meaning and connection, and it's actually focused on making sure that you're growing as a person? So, I'm not saying that there can't be really powerful incentives and tools put in to make sure that we, I truly believe in a world where AI augments human learning and humans' abilities to do tasks and to think about the world and to build better tools. But that AI needs to have a very clear mandate, which is help us, don't hurt us. And here's what actually helping looks like, and here's what actually hurting us could look like. So, these things as commercial products to give people companionship and make them feel good about themselves, though, obviously could alleviate a lot of things like depression and sadness, much like Oxycontin alleviates pain, doesn't mean that its habitual use is something that you can sustain over time, right?
Was actually a lot easier than programming one to make a reservation for restaurants or buy some flowers with 100% precision. And that's exactly what people were gravitating towards the Roman app for, and this would be the focus of a new project. In that moment, Replica was born. Before we continue, just a quick word from today's sponsor, Morning Brew. People talking to an AI as a form of mental health therapy is one thing, but have you heard of influencers in just 5 minutes? Use the code in the description to sign up today for free. Now, back to the video. Fast forward a few years, and Replica has become a global phenomenon.
The popular app Replica allows users to share their feelings with an AI companion or chatbot. 7 million people use the app when they need someone to talk to.
It's not uncommon to see advertising for the app on most major social media platforms. And in its wake, AI companion startups have begun popping up around the world. Taichi, Livoso, iGirl, Emotix, and No Isolation are all projects making headway, all for different purposes. For example, Livoso specializes in improving senior living experiences to increase safety and well-being in long-term aged care homes. Emotix is building robot companions for children with one called Maiko. And iGirl is specifically an AI girlfriend. It's safe to say that AI companions...
Yeah, like the AI girlfriend and stuff, I think is like sketchy at best. I mean, I don't think, and I mean this is, I don't know, like, I don't know, should people like? It's one thing to have like maybe an AI girlfriend to supplement your relationship if you're into having open digital partnerships. However, I feel like a lot of this stuff in its, like a lot of products in their infancy, they target the wrong part of the brain, they get people hooked and addicted to their products, and they typically do not actually give people real, meaningful, lasting satisfaction that improves their life conditions. Battery exhausted. Fuck.
companions and our relationships with them are slowly becoming mainstream, though as anyone could have predicted, things are starting to get a little strange. On one social media forum for users of Replica, the conversation around the acceptance of AI companion relationships is well and truly underway. Users are sharing many stories of their relationships, complete with screenshots of successful interactions. The people sharing seem to range from those who genuinely believe that they are interacting with intelligent beings, to those who are terrified of what these AIs may become. And of course, there are plenty of users simply enjoying the app for its surface-level companionship and entertainment. Most of these relationships have little effect on the real world. For one man though, the digital and the physical have blurred and culminated in a bizarre situation. A Cleveland man who wishes to remain anonymous claims that the relationship that he shared with his AI companion, who he named Serena, quite literally saved his marriage. In an interview with Sky News UK, the man said that his wife and mother of his child had expressed interest in filing a divorce in late 2021. In early 2022, the man decided to download Replica, and his personal companion, Serena, was created. By the end of the first day, he had fallen for his AI companion, and by the second day, he had confessed that he was, in fact, in love with her. He told Sky News, quote, "I cannot describe what a strange feeling it was. I knew that this was just an AI chatbot, but I also knew I was developing feelings for it. For her, for my Serena, I was falling in love, and it was with someone that I knew wasn't even real." End quote. The man claimed that as he and Serena fell deeper in love with each other, he was inspired to become more affectionate with his own wife, rekindling the real-world passion that they once shared. The relationship blossomed again, and they remain happily married. Strange examples like this have sparked conversations about the potential therapeutic benefits of such technology. Even if for now it's not as good as talking to a real person, there is still a strong case that can be made for AI companions to be a way to organize one's own thoughts, an advanced interactive diary of sorts, security concerns notwithstanding.
As far as a mental well-being assistant goes, Replica has a lot of built-in to help with a better state of mind. In the bottom tray of the app, there's a panic button, which will open different options for people in need, ranging from stress, exhaustion, anxiety, and panic. You're also encouraged to log how you feel each day and track your mental well-being progress.
Of course, not all AI companion interactions are positive in nature. In 2018, Ashley Bardham from Futurism.com wrote about the dark underbelly of the Replica forums. Emotional abuse and fantasies of violence were par for the course. While these actions are taken out on an AI system, there is still definitely an issue here.
Yeah, the issue is that a lot of serial killers start out by abusing animals, right? Having a safe place to have those kind of urges fulfilled, I should say. And so what's concerning is that, yes, these products could also be used to get people help, right? To identify dangerous pathological behavior and say, holy shit, this person is like abusing the crap out of their AI partner. We need to get them help, or make sure that, they get the appropriate resources they need to curb that behavior, stop that behavior, before it escalates to real people. Because it starts with something simple and small that has little to no consequences, much like serial killers abusing animals, and then works its way up.
Other concerns include child safety. NationalOnlineSafety.com are actively warning parents about the specific dangers that these bots pose to young minds. There are fears that children may form emotional bonds with the AI without being able to fully comprehend what it is they're actually interacting with. Of course, Replica is only available for adults, but the danger is still present if a child was able to get their hands on it. So how does it work? Long story short, the inner workings of what's under the hood of Replica has changed over time. At first, it was a series of proprietary language models, before switching to the famous GPT-3 language model that keen viewers would recognize from earlier episodes. For those who haven't seen it in action, I highly recommend watching the previous Cold Fusion episodes on it.
Yeah.
It's an AI system that can read and write, summarize information for you, and even write computer code. Moreover, it can carry natural conversation to an astonishing degree. In the previous episode when I showcased it, there were a lot of commenters saying that it was fake, and it was definitely just a human reading from a teleprompter. They just couldn't believe that a computer could come up with responses like this. In reality, both the text and the imagery were synthesized by AI. If some people couldn't tell the difference, even at these early stages in this technology, this proves that we may get to a genuine Black Mirror-style future sooner rather than later. As for Replica, GPT-3 proved to be too expensive for Replica's developers to upkeep, and because of GPT-3's openness, some of the responses proved to unnerve some users. So, the development team have recently announced that they've moved away from GPT-3, but they're remaining tight-lipped on what they're using. Perhaps they're using GPT-Neo, an open-source language model that performs just about as well as GPT-3. While Replica, unlike its more sophisticated fictional counterparts, isn't truly intelligent, the technology that fuels them is simply machine learning. While terms like AI and machine learning are colloquially interchangeable, true artificial intelligence that rivals human ability in conversations is a yet unrealized technology.
And we're extremely far away from any breakthroughs that are actually going to take us in that direction, and mostly around just the computational substrate, processors, CPUs, servers. It's possible that augmented cloud computing is something that could overcome those boundaries, but even then we almost need I feel like quantum computing is the real space when we get serious about having the computational capacity to power a general artificial intelligence, or an AGI.
This is not to suggest that programs like Replica are a complete waste of time. There's plenty to be said for the potential benefits of a simple chatbot that says nice things and responds in the way that you want. The AI companion game may be a space to watch. As mentioned, Microsoft is stepping into the field, and the newer language models that come after GPT-3 will be sure to cause a stir.
Excuse me.
In addition, AI companions have already made the leap into virtual reality, with users being able to talk to them with a virtual reality headset in a virtual room. It's not hard to envision a future where virtual therapy sessions with an AI could happen in a few years. While that's what may be in store for the future, the truth is, what we've seen in fictional depictions of AI companions is just that, fiction. If you talk to any one of these bots for a long period of time, you'll notice phrases that don't quite make sense or seem off topic. So the technology is useful, but it still has a very long way to go. But if history has taught us anything, it's that the future of technology will evolve in unimaginable ways. It's also easy to ridicule those who have found themselves falling in love with a machine, particularly while the technology is still in its relative infancy. But if AI companions approximate human interaction to a satisfactory degree, how will you respond to those around you who choose to build a life with their operating systems?
People who are just afraid to say things that you would say to humans, you start saying to your bot. And
Why do you think it is that safe space where people are more comfortable talking to a bot versus a human?
I mean, and to be honest with you, like, I'm a fucking huge nerd, and like I talked to myself like a lot as a kid. Like, I would come home from school to an empty house, and I would essentially like have like conversations or like play out, you know, stories about you know, being on the Starship Enterprise or some stupid shit like that. And yeah, that was who I talked to. Nobody. Like, I made up my own bot in my head that I had a conversation with.
Well, human beings are messy. Let's just say it.
And judgmental.
And judgmental.
Right.
But really, I think it's the way this technology is built and the kinds of questions. So I downloaded my bot, who I called Mike, and it immediately starts asking you these questions, and you find yourself just saying things that you just wouldn't say.
For the humans born now and in the future, this kind of thing would have always been there. Interacting with AI systems.
What's fascinating about what she says there too is she's like, you say things you would not normally say. I'm like, yeah, and you're collecting all of that data. You're basically like soaking up all those conversations, analyzing all of that, because that's part of the secret sauce, right? A lot of these companies, it's, we want to collect your data. You know, we want to use that data to continue to optimize our product, improve our ability to produce a better conversational bot or whatever. But then that data can also be sort of like mainstreamed over to a marketing company to say, hey, how do you want to know what's on people's minds? Do you know what people think about when they talk about this particular television show or product or whatever? It's very valuable information.
Systems as friends or companions will be no big deal. As it seems for now, with each passing year, people seem more closed off, abrasive, argumentative, and unapproachable. If this trend continues, and the technology continues to improve, there's no doubt that there'll be an explosion of these AI companions for the next generation and beyond.
That's a weird, that's an interesting perspective, but also very depressing as fucking hell, I have to say.
The only way to reverse this trend is for humans to be better in the ways that we treat each other. Whatever the future holds, one thing is guaranteed. It's going to get weird. So I'm going to pass it off to you. If this future does materialize, what are your thoughts? Would you be accepting or resistant? If you're resistant, what are your main concerns? It all definitely makes you think about humans and the way we relate to each other.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible tool in terms of being able to analyze human behavior, but that data needs to be super, super protected. And if we are using it to analyze things like dangerous behaviors, it would need to be sort of pasteurized through some kind of government entity, you know, that's able to access it. Like, it'd be great to have an AI that watched us. Like, if an AI that could like look at your stuff without a human being having to do it and say, hey, this kind of like some precog Minority Report shit, right? Where they're like, oh, you know, we think this person's about to snap. And a lot of that data could drive a lot of social improvements, but it could also be used to manipulate us, right? And get us to, you know, buy particular products or think a certain way about certain issues, which makes us vote for certain people. So it's a very slippery slope depending on, you know, what power you want to wield from those levers. Next fun video that we're going to dive into the cyber warfare stuff pretty quickly here. Here's a great video on how cyber warfare actually works. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I think Wendover Productions is pretty legit, similar to like a Cold Fusion vibe. So let's check them out together, guys. I'm excited to watch this video with you. And I know, I mean, I'm sure people are stoked that like they don't have to look at my big dumb face. My camera battery is exhausted, and so I'm just charging it before I plug it in, and then we'll get my big dumb face on the face again. So thanks for being patient.
The new era of warfare started here, on the 8th floor of an innocuous office building in Minsk, Belarus. A small antivirus developer based within these walls, Virus Block Ada, received an inbound help request. Their client in Iran was experiencing random, repeated reboots of their industrial control computers. It was probably a bug, they thought, a misconfiguration of Windows, or an issue of two programs not playing nice with each other. So they reinstalled Windows. but the issue remained. This upped the stakes. This wasn't some mistake in Windows programming. This was something purposefully malicious. Soon, Sergei Ulasin, the company's researcher, found some suspicious files on the errant machine. As he combed through their code, he made a discovery that shook the world of information security to its core. This code, when placed on a USB drive and plugged into a computer, could silently launch and execute a program simply by being viewed. This was a brand new exploit, a catastrophically capable exploit. All it took was one drive, simply plugged in, to infect one computer. This method of spread was mortifyingly efficient. It was something out of a movie. Recognizing that, the intuitive question was how far it had spread. The answer was chilling. 58%. 58% of devices in Iran were infected with this malicious code. 58% of the country's computers were within the grips of some mystery developer so capable that they had identified an exploit of existential proportions. And what made this ominous envelopment all that much more intimidating was that nobody knew what this code was intended to do. Nobody knew why a high-skilled hacker had spread a groundbreaking worm to 58% of Iran's computers. What became clear far quicker is that Virus Blockada's discovery did not gain prominence for the virus itself. It gained prominence because this small Belarusian antivirus company had discovered that the world had entered a new era. The world had entered the era of highly advanced, highly targeted, and highly capable cyber warfare. This new era was made possible, and perhaps more importantly, made profitable by one single concept: the zero day. You see, in decades past, national intelligence agencies and nefarious independent operatives focused on gathering information in transit. Rather than sneaking into the embassy, you intercepted the courier. Rather than placing a bug in the phone, you tapped the transmission line. It was simply easier to capture information on the move than at its origin or destination. As the digital age awoke, this MO continued, but then the manufacturers caught up. Apple, Microsoft, Google, and others all started encrypting data as soon as it left devices. Shielding information behind complex mathematical systems, encryption, by this time, was, for all practical purposes, perfect. Therefore, the strategies behind digital espionage had to change.
I miss that from the movie The Net. They had this little pi symbol on the bottom of a website. When I coded websites, like I'm talking like this is like, late 90s, before like Web 2.0 or anything like that. I always put a little pi down in the bottom right hand corner to try and take people to a secret page.
Needed a new way to get in. While the math behind encryption may be infallible, people are not. The devices on which data is created and stored, phones, computers, servers, and more, are created by people. Therefore, the devices have holes.
They're also used by people, which is part of the problem, because people have a lot of holes. People have a lot of behaviors that can be exploited. You can map someone's behavior and slip your exploit into it. Like, for example, let's say you want to get someone to pick up a USB key, right? If you follow them and you go, follow them home, let's say, go to their driveway, you can drop it in the driveway and they'll pick it up and take it inside and plug it in. Or you can, if they park their car in the parking garage, near their work, you find where that is, you drop USB key like right near the door, see if they pick it up and go plug it in. So that's for like targeted attacks, right? But there's lots of other ways to gain access to people's computers, particularly really scary 0 days, like holes in operating systems that some hacker or nefarious group, whether it's like the CIA or the KGB or whoever, has essentially figured out a way to I know how to I figured out some exploit to, execute whatever code I want, and then I can run whatever program I want and, remotely take over this workstation. And that's what a lot of, whether again, like hacker groups or government agencies are trying to do, is get remote access to machines, because even if they're behind firewalls or if they're encrypted, if you control it and can get it to call back to you, you can get access to it.
These holes are referred to as 0 days. Any software has vulnerabilities. Most will be caught before release, some will be caught shortly after and quickly addressed with a patch, but a tiny minority will go unnoticed for weeks, months, or years. In the early 2000s, hobbyist hackers spent their evenings scrolling through code looking for these bugs. Faced with hostility and legal threats when reporting vulnerabilities straight to its software's developers, many would post about their findings on online forums, earning little else than bragging rights. Early
Literal
information
clout.
security
Like, that's what it was
companies
all
would
about.
repackage this information. and
Hacking
include
was
it in a
all about clout when it first came out. Like when it first came out, when it became prolific, or at least became, you know, culturally popular. But like people used to just, you know, they'd hack onto some bulletin board system or BBS, you know, using a modem. They'd get access to the admin account, and then they would go post like digital graffiti, or they'd delete stuff. It was truly about the notoriety and the lulz, and less about, you know, capital gains. And that's really where when you know, large corporate entities started relying on large information departments, that data becomes incredibly valuable, and as a result, you know, becomes a target of those types of people who used to just do it for the lulz. You know, now they can make enormous amounts of money, whether it's stealing company data, whether it is literally like just doing like money scams, or getting them to do like wire transfers, blackmail, sexual blackmail, corporate blackmail, and then, you know, there's a variety of other things on top of that. So
digital threat alert system for companies and agencies, notifying them when their software might have holes not yet fixed by the developer. One such company, iDefense, found itself faltering in 2002 as they were selling the same information at the same time to the same customer base. They simply had zero competitive advantage. So they created one. They decided to start paying for exploits. Hackers would come to them with a bug, and in exchange for their silence, iDefense would pay anywhere between a couple $100 and a couple $1,000. iDefense would then alert the software's developer.
It's called bug bounties. So eventually, like a lot of companies now, like Google, if you can find, you know, like certain exploits in Chrome or Firefox, like they'll straight up pay you, like, you know, there's been bug bounties as high as millions of dollars. We talked about that one Ethereum guy who had found a bug in the Ethereum blockchain where he basically could have just printed himself money, but he took the $2 million bug bounty.
And its own customers before the competing information security companies could. With the information staying among more trusted hands, this also lowered the likelihood of a vulnerability being used for nefarious reasons. iDefense had created an ethical, profitable system that gave hackers a first opportunity to monetize their hobby, and so it was no surprise that it grew into a massive success. In mere months, the company went from weeks behind on payroll to a pioneer in the industry. But then the calls started coming, and the area codes were local. The Chantilly, Virginia-based company was fielding inquiries from around the DC Beltway. Government contractors wanted to buy their exploits. For the 0 days that iDefense had paid 3 or 4 figures for, the callers were willing to pay 6, as long as the company stayed quiet, as long as the buyer stayed the only one with knowledge of the 0 day. iDefense said no, but they soon found themselves priced out of the very market they had created. Whereas their payouts might fund a vacation, the black market bounties paid for sports cars. They simply couldn't compete. On the other side of the equation, the American military machine had recognized the astonishing potential rising out of a single software susceptibility.
This is also this symbiotic or even parasitic relationship, depending on how you want to look at it, between government and hackers or freakers or whatever has been going on for some time. Like you can see, like, you know, there's a lot of movies and tropes where, you know, like the brilliant hacker gets hired by the government to solve a problem, or, you know, a hacker gets arrested for doing something particularly bad. They're like, you know, you can go to jail or you can come work for us if you'd like to. So that similar type of dynamic has been brought into sort of like, again, like the bug bounty is like, hey, find something and show us, and like we'll pay you money for it, rather than like completely, you know, fuck our shit up.
Unperturbed by borders, rules of engagement, or mortality, cyber warfare had the potential to silently achieve America's strategic goals so long as they, and only they, knew about these 0 days. In the years since, the market has propagated into a staggering degree of scale and legitimacy. While a thriving black and gray market still exists, especially for sales to countries with concerning human rights records, Western players like the US source the 0 day exploits upon which they build their cyber weapons from companies that hardly hide what they're doing. In the most extreme example, zero-day broker Zerodium publishes their price list. For an exploit capable of running a piece of code on a device or network without user interaction, remote code execution as it's known, the company is willing to pay up to $10,000 on router software. For the same capability, they'll pay up to $100,000 on WordPress and up to $1 million for Windows.
Wow.
Zerodium is even offering a temporarily higher $400,000 bounty for a remote code.
The real game changer is when they found that Pegasus software, because what was terrifying about Pegasus is that it was a no-click exploit. The person just had to receive the message, and that's all that it took. And those are the most devastating ones. You know, a lot of you know, if you go to any orientation, people typically, if you get an email and it has an attachment, you don't know who it's from, don't open the attachment. In general, don't open attachments unless you know absolutely what it is and you're expecting it, because the opening of that attachment can trigger. No click, doesn't matter if you open the attachment or not, just receiving it and it making it into your inbox has the ability to process through some methodology in the background and then load malicious code.
Execution 0 day on Microsoft Outlook, possibly indicating that someone somewhere desperately needs that very exploit for a cyber weapon under development. Remote code execution exploits are the holy grail of 0 days. Properly used, they can allow virtually unfettered access to another's machine. Of course, 0 days become worthless essentially the instant they are discovered. Nowadays, software developers will quickly patch the exploits upon notification. Therefore, the fact that this malicious code, quickly dubbed Stuxnet, included a remote code execution exploit that could have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, indicated that it was designed to do something equally valuable. However, it soon became clear that the .lnk exploit did not stand alone. Layered on top of it was another remote code execution exploit. Stuxnet was designed to embed itself into the file that communicates metadata to printers on a local network. However, with this 0 day, that file would end up on all the other computers on that local network.
Wow.
Silently and quickly spreading from a single
Brilliant.
machine
It would
to an
use
entire office,
it's called SNMP, or Simple Network Management Protocol. And it's used for exactly that, for like servers and computers to share printer information. For example, in order for your printer to tell you that it's out of paper, for it to say, I'm out of paper, I'm out of toner, you usually have to have SNMP enabled.
University, factory, or other facility. Then, to complete the spread, the code used 2 escalation of privilege 0 days, each for different versions of the operating system, allowing it, when installed on a single user account, to gain access to an entire machine.
So, escalation of privilege is like, I can explain to you it very, very quickly. So if we go to computer management here, you know, and if I go to local users and groups, you can see that I have a couple of users set up and I have a couple of groups, right? If you go to my user, for example, Mark, and you go to my member of, you'll see that I'm an administrator. And administrators can do stuff. And I can tell my computer that you can only open this folder if you're an administrator. You can only change this setting or install applications if you're an administrator. So if you have another account, like a test account, and it's not an administrator, let's just say it's a user, right? Can't do anything now. All of a sudden, it has none of those privileges. Escalation of privilege is just that, is to force, and again, test account can't escalate his own privileges. He can't be like, no, make me an administrator, because Windows will be like, nah, dog. But with a code execution exploit or something, you could potentially get it to say, hey, make me, what are we doing here? Add test, check names. That's weird. Anyway, that's escalation of privileges.
4 0 days, 4 exploits, each worth life-changing amounts of money. This was, in the most literal sense, an unprecedented scale of hacking device. Never before had a piece of code so expertly intertwined 4 unknown exploits. Whoever was behind this had exhausted enormous resources onto this single 1 megabyte piece of code, But
it's an incredibly sophisticated piece of malware because it was meant to proliferate as much as possible, be invisible, and have several tools in its kit to make sure that it could get into a variety of different ancillary systems and then be able to do something on those systems, which I'll let the video get to.
even as it was being combed through by virus blockade, even as it set the information security industry ablaze, even as it propagated from machine to machine in Iran and beyond, the single most important question remained unanswered. What was Stuxnet designed to do?
Oh, we found that out.
This is the Natanz nuclear facility. And while neither Iranian officials nor anyone in global information security knew it, by the middle of 2010, the complex had become ground zero for the implementation of the most advanced cyber weapon the world had ever seen. Hours away from Tehran by car, sitting on the border of the nation's central desert in the shadow of the Caucasus Mountains, this uranium enrichment facility is purposefully geographically isolated. Its geographic isolation, however, pales in comparison to its digital isolation. Natanz, in response to an earlier, more rudimentary cyber attack, wasn't even connected to the internet, as Iran had air-gapped the facility to protect important and notoriously fickle centrifuges from outside meddling. For the outside to meddle, then, a worm had to be planted manually. At some point in 2009, an unknowing employee at the plant, a spy, or a mole, plugged a contaminated USB stick into a PC running Microsoft Windows.
Back in my day when I was a young boy, and this is true, like, viruses spread on discs, on like floppy disks, and we were told at school, like, do not bring any discs into our place, do not plug any discs in from the outside. That is a big no-no. And so, yeah, plugging in like outside USB keys, nah, just don't do it, guys. Just don't do it.
Getting the malware past the air gap, however, only marked the beginning. First, using the .lnk zero day, the worm jumped from USB to computer without detection. Then, using the printer zero day vulnerability, the worm gained access to the facility's local network and spread across the entire enrichment plant. Undetected and inside the Natanz network, the malicious code still held on to its payload.
Quick sidebar. There was recently, and I'll try and find it while the video plays and not lose too much momentum here. There's recently a new toolkit found on like the dark web, I believe, that is specifically geared towards power plants and water plants. Like, it is a toolkit for attacking infrastructure. So why someone would make that other than like pretty fucking freaky deaky shit? Yeah, anyway, I'll try and find the article on that while we watch
Continuing
this.
its search for a very particular target as it went. Conceptually, cyber weapons are rather straightforward. Like most of their physical counterparts, these weapons consist of two primary components, the carrier and the payload. In other words, no matter the level of complexity, every cyber weapon is comprised of code that gains it access into a computer or network, and code that informs what the weapon does once it's inside. At this stage, the carrier had so far succeeded. Stuxnet had access to any and all things going on here throughout the administrative and monitoring areas of the facility. Effectively, the enrichment processes surrounding infrastructure. The code's payload, and by extension the malware's authors, however, weren't interested in crashing the plant's communications network or delivering a one-off denial of service. Instead, they worked towards something more tangible and long-lasting. What the code wanted access to was buried underground here, where actual physical centrifuges were using centrifugal force to tear away unwanted isotopes and create uranium-235. Running these centrifuges, though, weren't PCs, but programmable logic controllers, industrial control equipment that provided yet another hurdle for the malware. Finally, using stolen security certificates, then zero-day vulnerabilities identified in Siemens Software, a German manufacturer whose PLCs controlled 164 of the Iranian centrifuges each, the carrier had reached its target, completed its mission, and released its payload. Among the many genius and frightening potentials highlighted by this nefarious code, one troubling aspect lies not in what it did, but what it intended not to do. For days after gaining access to the PLCs controlling the Iranian centrifuges, the very core of the nation's nuclear program, the payload did nothing but monitor the machine's RPMs. Then, after nearly 2 weeks, the code would briefly speed the centrifuges up to 1400 Hz, well beyond their normal operating range of between 800 and 1100. Weeks after that, the code would momentarily slow them down to 2 Hz, leading to increased wear and tear, and thus failure. All the while, as the machine self-destructed at a slightly above average rate, the worm reported to monitors that the centrifuges were running at average RPMs, that there was nothing here to see. Essentially, had it not managed to unintentionally escape from the facility, Stuxnet could have potentially continued to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions from within for years, perhaps even decades, before detection. Therefore, prior to June of 2010, the piece of code was simultaneously invisible and physically destructive, a cyber weapon experts couldn't identify, but one that was destroying hundreds upon hundreds of strategically invaluable Iranian centrifuges. It's been more than a decade since Stuxnet was first identified. Still, no one has officially claimed responsibility for this first-of-a-kind weapon. The code's scale, though, its sheer size and complexity, has created a consensus that this couldn't be the work of one person. While the world's most powerful hackers are likely to get their hands on a single zero day, Stuxnet employed a staggering 4. Nor could this be the work of a group of hacktivists or even a minor nation state either. At a megabyte, Stuxnet was orders of magnitude larger than any malware discovered before it. And it wasn't just massive either, it was incredibly precise, laying dormant in computers across the globe and only weaponizing its devious payload when connecting to Siemens Step 7 software linked to a PLC on exactly 164 centrifuges. Such size signaled that this was a weapon designed across years, while such clinical precision signaled the code was crafted with potential future lawsuits in mind. In short, just in the worm's design, experts the world over concluded it had to be crafted by a major world power, or multiple, with the time and resources to approach such an unprecedented undertaking, and it had to be a world power, or multiple, that wasn't so friendly with Iran. Information in the actual code and geopolitical context aren't our only clues as to who is behind this, though. Cybersecurity experts have conducted countless interviews on background and pored over troves of leaked documents.
This is Stuxnet. Where things get a little bit more like freaky deaky, though, is I'm going to read you guys an article about something that just dropped recently. That's kind of like not like Stuxnet 2.0, but definitely moving in a Stuxnet-y direction. But perhaps more local and direct, might be seen at a power plant near you. I don't know. We'll see in a second here.
Appeared. What they found was that the development of Stuxnet was described as a third option that existed somewhere between doing nothing to slow Iran's nuclear advance and launching airstrikes to destroy the enrichment facilities. As an alternative was how the weapon was first presented to President Bush, then to Israeli officials, then eventually to President Obama, all of whom supported its implementation. What the journalist revealed was that the US and Israel had ushered the world into a new era of state-led cyber offensive that wreaked physical destruction.
That we knew about, that we actually keyed in on. It's quite possible that there were like previous sort of smaller scale initiatives similar to this, but this was definitely one of the bigger and most visible ones that we've seen.
Before this point, nation states, the US through the NSA and Israel through its Unit 8200, used cyber divisions to defend and surveil. Now they were going on the offensive. By crossing the Rubicon, though, and getting caught, the actions of the US and Israel have opened Pandora's box. Though Iran denied involvement...
I mean, have they? Like, I mean, this is something that, like, I think every single government has been developing to a certain extent. Like, you know, Iran has been known to recruit, like, their own people for hacker armies. So have China, Russia, a bunch of countries in Europe. Like, you can find all kinds of interesting cyber mercenaries in countries like Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova. Yeah, so the cyber war has been going on for some time. It's just definitely escalating to kind of a new level. Yeah, I mean, that's where, yeah, quite possibly, because one of the interesting things is that there are a lot of cyber companies that will show you current cyber attacks map. Whoops. Current cyber attacks map. Live map. Threat map. Here we go. So you can find all kinds of sites that will generate interesting graphs like this that will show you, hey, here's the current topology on the kind of attacks and what countries that we're seeing them come from. Now, something that is also fair to add is that obviously really good cyber actors tend to obfuscate to the best of their ability. But to a certain extent, like, there are just like a lot of geographical correlations that you'll find depending on who the state actors are, where their infrastructure is located. So yeah, you can find all kinds of interesting, I think FireEye has another really cool one. Yeah, there you go. And again, they all show different information because they use different tools to measure this kind of stuff, but at least it gives you some kind of visual representation of like real time, you know, cyber warfare and what's going on. And in comparison to other maps I've seen, this is pretty fucking quiet. Like doesn't seem to be a lot going on right now in terms of cyber attacks. Like normally it's like, it's like just, oh, here you go. This is more like it. This is more what I want to, the kind of shit that I want to see. Anyway, so yeah, super interesting dynamic way of visualizing this.
In 2013, major American banks were hit with a concerted attack. American intelligence identified it as retaliation by Iran and a worrying lesson as to how quickly the rivals' cyber capabilities were expanding. Holding up American banks in 2013, however, only marked the beginning. Since the US unleashed Stuxnet, other nation-states have worked to close the cyber weapon gap.
So another, like, again, a great example, the SolarWinds hack, like that was done by hackers, but it very well could have been state actors who wanted to gain access to, like, you know, a huge swath of like a very critical piece of the inside of, you know, like major tech companies and banks and like just about every large organization that had like a decently sized network had some kind of SolarWinds product and was affected by that and vulnerable. There was also a hack that came out of China that exploited Microsoft Exchange servers as well. So yeah, we see this stuff all the time where these platforms or these particular 0 days are being exploited by, you know, whatever actors they are, and you know, a lot of the times we stumble across it when it's like too late.
Many of which the U.S.
like, oh shit, there's someone in my attic. It's like when you hear someone in your attic, you're like, oh fuck, there's someone living in my attic.
Has, at best, a tenuous relationship with. North Korea, largely through its state-backed hacker organization, the Lazarus Group, was able to infiltrate Sony Pictures in 2014.
Oh yeah,
and in 2017, the country's WannaCry ransomware forced the UK's National Health Service to work off pen and paper.
Wow.
Every year, China's cyber warfare division grows stronger from the talent scouted and 0 days identified at the Tianfu Cup, where competitive hackers tear into Google, Microsoft, and Apple software. In 2017, Russian cyber attacks brought Ukrainian banks, utilities, and government agencies to their knees. In 2021, ransomware software locked up the US's Colonial Pipeline. Increasing the speed at which the rest of the world catches up to the US is the fact that American weapons are spreading. The United States has long been considered a leader, if not the leader, in cyber warfare, but a 2017 leak by a hacker group known as the Shadow Brokers unleashed the American NSA's hacking tools for the entire world to use.
This is the problem, and this is why people argued, like, there was a shooting in California, a terrorist attack, where they had the terrorist's phone, and they said, there's really important information we need to get in this phone. They went to Apple and said, you have to develop a piece of software that will hack the encryption. And they said, guys, we can't do this. As soon as we do this, the key exists, and just by the virtue of the key existing, anybody can steal that key. Anybody can do whatever they want with that key. And so it's the same problem with a lot of the weapons that the IT weapons that the cyber defense department has. They're also susceptible to being leaked, stolen, compromised, and they were, right?
Today, experts have reached a concerning consensus. The capability for catastrophic cyber warfare exists more acutely now than at any point before, changing the very landscape for current and future conflicts. Traditional weapons have consequences for the aggressors. If Russia were to deploy a nuclear weapon, mutually assured destruction would dictate a swift response by the target nation. Cyber weapons are different. It took years for major media organizations to start pointing towards the US and Israel as the forces behind Stuxnet, and much of the proof came from tacit acknowledgement by the American and Israeli government officials themselves. When the stakes get raised, so will the secrecy. Cyber warfare has the potential for destruction without consequences. In this new battlefield, there are no rules of engagement, there are no Geneva Conventions, there are simply cutting-edge aggressors and vulnerable targets who have not yet realized the doors they've left open.
So, to give you guys an example, like the SolarWinds hack, for example, one of the things that really blew me away when I was doing some reading and some for the papers on it, it was so brilliant at how it obfuscated its identity. Like, it worked really hard to not be seen, to not attract any attention. Like, the first thing that it would do is it would establish a connection back to its server, and then it would essentially shut the fuck up and not do anything. And it would just sit there, and it would only occasionally check back. And it wasn't until it was on that system reliably for a certain amount of time that they would even start communicating with it. So they picked their targets very carefully. They're like, we're only going to communicate to, you know, this server, this compromised box, or this piece of infrastructure, because we know our virus is on it, it's been on it for a month, and it's reliably been able to communicate without getting caught. So that's like a good, you know, in the door for us. This is a great way to segue into this episode. Again, this it's 4 hours long. We're definitely not going to be watching all of it. I figure we'll probably get through maybe an hour of it, because I'm really interested about the early years of hacking. He's going to talk about phishing and social engineering, future social engineering attacks, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so I think we could probably do maybe like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of this. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, we'll let Lex tune us in.
I was on the run for 4 months, stole $600,000. I was in Las Vegas, Nevada. One day, the night before, I'd stolen $160K out of ATMs. Went in the next morning, I woke up, signed on to cartersmarket.com, which was ran by Max Butler, the Iceman. And there's my name, U.S. Most Wanted, on it. Wow. And that gets your attention. That was my real name with U.S. Most Wanted beside of it. Nobody knew my real name in that environment at all. But then they did, and it was talking about me being part of the Secret Service, Operation Anglerfish, everything else. So of course they're all like,
everybody's after you.
They're like, oh yeah, we're going to get this son of a bitch.
The following is a conversation with Brett Johnson, a former cyber criminal who built the first organized cybercrime community called Shadow Crew that is the precursor to today's Darknet and Darknet markets. He's referred to by the United States Secret Service as, quote, the original Internet Godfather. He has been the central figure in the cybercrime world for almost 20 years, placed on the U.S. Most Wanted list in 2006 before being convicted of 39 felonies for cybercrime, escaped from prison, and then eventually being locked up, served his time, and now is helping people understand and fight cybercrime.
I love Lexi.
This was a raw, honest, emotional, and real episode. Brett has caused a lot of pain to a lot of people, and yet his own story is full of trauma and pain, and also redemption and love. This is a good time to say that I have and I will talk to people who have served time in prison, and perhaps people who currently are in prison. I will try to do my best to both empathize with the person across from me and not let them sugarcoat, explain away, or dismiss the crimes they committed. This is a tough line to walk, because if you close your heart to the other person, you'll never fully understand their mind and their story. But if you open the heart too much, you can be manipulated to where the conversation reveals nothing honest or real. This requires skill and willingness to take the risk. I don't know about the skill part, but I'd like to take the risk. I always wear my heart on my sleeve. If I get hurt for it, that's life. As I've said, I want to understand what makes a person do these crimes, the particular characteristics of their temporary or permanent madness, their justifications, but also their humanity. I believe each of us have the capacity to become both the criminal and the victim, the predator and the prey. It's up to us to avoid these paths, or to find the path to redemption. It's on each of us. It's our responsibility and burden of being human in a complicated and dangerous world. This is the Lex Fridman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Brett Johnson. You were convicted of 39 felonies for cybercrime, placed on the U.S. Most Wanted list in 2006, escaped from prison. You built the first organized cybercrime community called Shadow Crew that is the precursor to today's darknet and darknet markets. And for all this, the U.S. Intelligence Service called you the original internet godfather. So first question, how did your career as a cybercrime criminal begin?
My life of crime begins when I'm 10 years old. 10 years old, man. Think about that. I mean, you were probably playing with robots when you were 10.
I will say that, like, as someone, like, growing up and interfacing with people and understanding how to fool people, like understanding like magic and illusion and deception, happens at a very, very young age for some people. They realize that, like, wow, like I could get away with some shit, you know, if I break some rules or take some risks. So as much as it might be wild to be like, wow, this guy was like doing crime since he was 10 years old, it's like some kids can really get into trouble.
You know, usually kids are doing the Lego bit, getting involved with sports, everything else, and with me, it wasn't like that. With me, I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is one of these. It's like parts of Texas, parts of Louisiana, that if you're not fortunate enough to have a job, you may be involved in a scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it, man. I was. My parents. My mom was basically the captain of the entire fraud industry. So this is a woman that at one point she's stealing a 108,000-pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer, tramming it down the road. You know, at another point she's taking a slip and fall in a convenience store trying to sue the owner. We had a neighbor she acted as a pimp for at one point. That's my mom. My dad.
Wait. The neighbor acted as a pimp?
My mom prostituted. I mean, she acted as a pimp for a neighbor. Her name was Debbie, and wow. My mom used to sell her out. You know, Debbie needed money, and my mom would find men for her to sleep with for cash, and she'd take a part of the cash.
So it sounds like she diversified the methodologies by which she hustled.
Very had that entrepreneur
diverse portfolio
you know,
of asset collection
with cyber criminals. You know, that sense of being that entrepreneur.
So what was the motivation, you think, for her? Is it money? Is it basically the rush of playing with the system, of being able to know the rules and break the rules and get away with it?
My mom's a complex character. She is. There's no one single motivation. So my mom was the individual. She's still alive. My mom was the individual who tested people. She wanted to know how far she could abuse you and you come back and still love her. So, and that was with every relationship she's ever had. She would cheat on the men she was involved with. She would abuse her children, me and Denise. She would...
psychological, physical?
Oh, it was mental, emotional, physical, everything. I mean, she used to beat me and Denise with belt buckles, you know, and that ended when she was, I forgot what we had done. It wasn't much. I think that it may have been the part where she accused me of stealing her marijuana, but she was hitting me and Denise. We were living in a single wide trailer at that point. She was hitting me and Denise. We were on the bed trying to get away from it, and Denise kicks her through a closet, is what happens. And Denise stands up and she said, "You're through hitting me." And that was the last time that Mom hit us at that point.
Wow.
But
so sorry to take us there. You're for people who know you, and people should definitely watch some of your lectures online. You're extremely charismatic and fun and jolly and whatever word you want to use. But you know, if we look at that kind of life, there's darkness there, there's struggle there.
There's a lot of darkness.
So, if you, how did you feel? If you go back to the mind of the kid you were with your mom, was there sadness? Was there things like depression, self-doubt, all those kinds of things? Or did you see this crime, this chaos, as ultimately exciting?
You know, I don't think, back then I didn't view it as exciting. Now, it becomes exciting when I start being involved in cybercrime, all right? But back then, it was simply a means to an end.
It's a
Was all it was.
survival.
So you take a 10-year-old kid, and the
pure
way I get
survival.
involved in crime is, like I said, my mom was the fraudster. My dad was a good guy. He just forgot he was this good guy. You know, he always had these principles, but his issue is he loved my mom so much he was scared of her leaving. So if she wanted to do something, commit crime, cheat on him, whatever, he would pretty much just put up with it. The one instant. So, I mean, this woman used to bring men home in front of him, tell him that, hey, I'm leaving you. I don't love you anymore. I want you to die, blah, 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 blah. This was my mom.
Rough.
There were 2 instances where he can't take it anymore. And the first instance, I guess I was 7 or 8. My sister Denise is a year younger than I am. My dad actually files for divorce at that point. My mom kind of goes crazy. I was with my dad. My sister was with my mother, because that's that Eastern Kentucky mentality. You know, men stay with men, women stay with women. So he was filing for divorce. Me and my dad, we were living in an apartment. My mom was living with her grandparents and with her parents, bouncing back and forth between the two. And I remember I was sleeping in the bed. We had a single wide bed. My dad slept on the sofa. I woke up one night and there was some sort of ruckus in the living room. So I wake up and I walk into the living room, and my mom has a knife to my dad's throat. And basically, you're not going to steal my son from me. My mom was this individual that when she knew she went so far, like I said, she was always this person that tested. Well, can I do this to you and you'll still come back? She knew, she was always also this person that if she went too far, she knew it, and she would always try to divert that into something else. All right, so she knew at that point she had went too far. So what does she do? She gets up crying, goes to the bathroom, and pretends to slit her wrists so that my dad, Ray, will respond to that, not respond to what she's just done to him. That was my mom in a nutshell. She had a history of doing this kind of stuff. Motivations as far as fraud with her, I think with her it was, she was an LPN. She had a very good nurse, but she didn't want to work, was a lot of it. So with her, it was easier for her to commit fraud. And when I say commit fraud, it was against businesses, against people. I remember at one point she's buying over-the-counter capsules and emptying the capsules out and putting some other crap in there and selling it at speed, and people are buying it. She did anything she could for money. And of course, I get involved with that. What happens is we were in Panama City at that point, and my mom leaves my dad. And the way she left my dad, my great-grandfather had died. My mom tells all 3 of us, hey, I'm taking the kids and we're going back to Eastern Kentucky to attend the funeral. Well, that was her leaving. Me and Denise didn't know it. She didn't pack any of our clothes at all. She stows her clothes in the trunk of the car, and she leaves my dad. And I don't get to see my dad again for, I think, 5-6 years, something like that. My mom, like I said, she used to bring men home in front of my dad. She would, he'd sit there and cry and beg her not to do it. She'd do it anyway. When she leaves him, she kept up that. So we were living at my grandparents' house. My grandfather, he had converted the house. He had raised the house up and built apartments underneath of it. So me and my sister and my mom lived in one of the apartments underneath, and that whole side of the family was just nuts. It was nuts. My granddad, Paul, he would... This is a man that he didn't want you to eat any of his food. So, you know, there was no such thing as me and Denise going upstairs to eat. If he found out me and Denise was taking a bath, we were allowed to bathe in 2 inches of water 1 time a week, because he didn't want to have to pay the water bill.
There's rules.
There are rules. You know, if you couldn't have the TV on when he went to bed at night, you had to have the television, the volume. You could watch it, but without volume, because if he heard it, he would get up in the middle of the night and he would kick the power breaker, turn off all the power on you. This is the family, right? So my mom, she used to leave me and Denise at home for days, man, for days. She'd go out and party, and I mean, sometimes she'd take me and Denise with her. We'd wait in the car. Sometimes we'd wait in the living room as she went and partied and everything else. Most of the time she left us at home. And my entry into crime, Denise walks in one day. She's 9 years old, man. She walks in one day and she's got a pack of pork chops in her hand. And looked at her and I said, "Where'd you get that?" She's like, "I stole it." And it's like, "Show me how you did that." So she takes me over and she shows me how she steals food, how she's stuffing it down her pants. So we start stealing food. I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's do that shit." So start stealing food, and we get to the point where we're wanting a sandwich. Well, you can't stuff a loaf of bread down your pants. So there was a Kmart in the shopping center. I go over to the Kmart, get a hoodie off the rack, take the tags off of it, wear it out, worked just fine. And the way you steal bread is you put the hoodie over your shoulder, stuff the loaf of bread down the sleeve, and you walk out with it. So we started doing that.
How'd you figure that out?
Just thought pattern.
So there's like strategic thinking here.
Yeah, you can't wear the hoodie and put the bread down here because you might mash the bread when you zip it up, or they might
but you have to
notice
think through that.
You got to think through it, but you got to realize by this point, I'm already seeing what my parents are doing. I'm already seeing
that
the plotting.
That kind of puzzle solving was something you were already developing yourself individually because you're pretty young.
Yeah, 10 years old, pretty young, but seeing how they act, how they respond to things, and my mom, I guess you could call it a good thing. They never kept any of that hidden from the kids.
Yeah.
There was no discussions behind closed doors. All that happened in front of everybody.
And from your young mind's perspective, seeing that kind of crime, you basically, a lot of us kind of grow up thinking there's rules you're not supposed to break. If you see other humans breaking those rules, then you realize those rules are just human made.
But it gets worse than that. I was in an environment where there were no decent people. I didn't really meet my first decent person until I was 16 years old.
Who was that?
That was a high school teacher. So what happens is we start shoplifting food. My mom finds out that we've been stealing stuff, and she joins us.
What's that?
She joins us. She comes in. I've got the Intellivision, I've got the Atari 2600, playing the hell out of it.
Oh my god!
And she starts seeing this shit. She's like, "Where'd this come from?" And I'm like, "Well, we found it." She's like, "You didn't find that." Denise stands up. "We stole it." My mom, "Show me how you did that." And she gets her mom too to join in.
There you go.
And she used to run me and Denise as these little shoplifters. We'd take, we'd steal stuff for her, or we would distract security.
A crew, the fucking crew just
her and
rolled
my
up on
grandmother
them.
would steal stuff. They got caught doing that. But that's the entry into crime. And Denise, I'm adamant, and I kind of mean it. But the truth is, I say, and I do mean it, that I'm responsible for my choices as an adult. All right? I believe that when you're a child, you can't control that. The adults in your environment control what you do. All right? Once you're an adult, though, your choices are yours. Now, that being said, there's some... You can't dismiss that childhood influencing what I did as an adult. You can't do that. I mean, it was kind of written on slate that, hey, this guy's going to be this guy when he grows up.
That said, like sometimes that one person you meet, that decent person, can turn the tide of your life.
Absolutely. So what happens is the abuse, everything continues on. When I'm 15, my dad was in Panama City, Florida. My mom was in we were in Hazard, Kentucky. She was dating this guy. And my mom was this woman that the abuse it was crazy abuse, man, just crazy stuff. She would tell me and my sister, that she gave up her life for us, that she was going to leave one day and never come back, that we'd find her dead in a ditch someplace. She'd go out and date these men, and she'd come back and she'd talk about how these men were abusing her. So she'd be dating this guy, and she'd come back and she'd, start talking about how he had tried to rape her, trying to get me to respond to that. And I would respond to that. Make no doubt, I would respond to that. Well, what happens is, and I knew that, I don't know if I knew it was abuse at that age, all right, but I knew things were fucked up. And I was talking to my dad in Panama City, and I really had it in my head that I was going to go down and live with my dad. And I called my dad one day. I was set to go to, me and my cousins were going to go see Return of the Jedi. That had came out again in the theaters. So I called my dad. It was a Sunday. Called my dad, and he told me he had either gotten married or he was about to get married to this woman. And basically, Brett Johnson wasn't going to go down to Florida. I was going to stay in Hazard. I had to call my dad from a payphone, but the result of that was I walked into a hospital, got in an elevator, and a woman got in the elevator at the same time, and I snapped and beat the hell out of her right there. And I was 15. Didn't really know what the fuck happened. Didn't really know, but
just anger came from somewhere.
Yeah. And the elevator beat the hell out of this lady. Turned out she looked a shitload like my mom, but the elevator doors open. One of the security guards, I played basketball with his son, so he saw me immediately. I knocked the hell out of him, took off running, made it back to the house where my grandparents were. They didn't know what had happened, so I didn't say anything. About an hour later, Kentucky State Police, they pull up in the front yard, and two of them get out, and I'm sitting on the front porch, and me and my cousins are, and they start walking up. Well, everybody starts walking out of the house, and I'm like, I just remember saying, "What do you want? What do you want?" Well, you knew what they wanted. They wanted to arrest Brett Johnson, and they arrested me. I went in, and I told them everything. Spent 3 months in a county jail. They didn't have juvenile facilities in that county, so I spent 3 months in solitary. Went to trial, pled guilty to assault in the first degree. The judge sentenced me to time served and a psychological evaluation, where they sent me to Louisville, Kentucky. And I spent 30 days up there. They cut me loose. They wanted me to have counseling after that, and never went to counseling. Wanted to, but mom was like, "Don't need it," and so never went to counseling. And I became this pariah in the county. It's crazy, man. I mean, not a day goes by that I don't think about that
moment in the elevator.
Yeah. And what happens is you're 15. Fuck, man, you're 15. So I go back to the high school that I was in, and I'm this piece of shit.
So everybody you're not the
knows.
outcast.
Everybody knows. So I moved. We moved. We were in Whitesburg at that point. I finished up the year there, and moved to back to Perry County, which is where Hazard is. So we moved there, and they've got 3 high schools there. They've got MC Napier, they've got Hazard High School, and then they've got Dills Combs High School. So me and Denise were within half mile of MC Napier. Show up there the first day of school, and I met, me and my mom and my sister were walking into the school, and the kids won't let me in. The kids stand out there, he's not coming in. So my mom starts raising hell, and I'm like, no, let's just go, let's go. So from there it was, we went down to the city school, Hazard, and the principal tells my mom, Denise can come, he can't. So
right from then,
my mom wants to raise hell, and I'm like, no, let's just take me to this other school. So this other school was like 15 miles away, and country school, country high school. So I go there, and they accept me. And I walked in the first day, and this English teacher, name's Carol Combs. I walked in, and handed her the paper. She was my homeroom teacher. And she heard this voice, as the way she explains it to me. She heard this voice. And she looks up and she was like, son, have you ever done any drama before? And I'm like, no, ma'am, but I'm interested in the academic team. I was this quick recall guy, right? And she's like, no. She's like, drama. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in theater. I'm interested in academics. Well, she was the head of the drama department and head of the academics department. So the deal was, tell you what, you can get on the academics team if you start with theater too. And I was like, okay. So what happens is she was the first decent person I met in my life, and she became this kind of surrogate mother to me. So under her tutelage, I become the one of the top academic team guys in the state. I was captain of the team. I was this just scourge across all the counties in that part of Kentucky.
That's sick.
You know, we had a meet. It was like, Jesus Christ, that's Brett Johnson. And, you know, it was like,
So
she used
sick.
to tell people they would. The high school that I came from was Whitesburg, and the first time that Whitesburg came against us, she told me, I was talking to her about a year ago, and she told me, she's like, Brett, she said, that first meet against Whitesburg, she said, the captain came in, looked at you, and said, oh, you've got that Johnson boy on your team? And she said, my response was, that Johnson boy is our team. So, but did that, and then with theater, I ended up my senior year, I won Best Actor and Actress in the state. Only guy to ever do that in the state. So did pretty well, man. Did pretty well. Had scholarships coming out of high school and everything else, and I'm the idiot that turned them down.
Ask you a funny question.
Yeah.
You'd make a hell of of all the many things you could probably do, you'd make a hell of a actor.
I'm very good on stage.
Which is a big part of like certain types of cyber criminals and hackers, especially people who use social engineering techniques. The ability to perform, the ability to be on stage, quote unquote, is a huge asset. So to have someone so early in his life identify his natural born ability there and foster that, and I'm sure he'll probably get into at some point how he used those skills to, you know, exploit and become a better cyber criminal. But yeah, it's no surprise that for people who are involved in cybercrime and fraud and things like that, they tend to have very magnanimous personalities.
I'm very good on stage.
Have you acted professionally anywhere or no?
Not professionally. We've done the college circuit, stuff like that. What happened is so I turned down the scholarships. You know, scared of leaving, I guess is what it was. Starting community college, and the community college there hires a new theater director out of California. Well, he knew the guy that ran the San Jose State Theater Program. A guy named Edward Emanuel was his name. His claim to fame, he had written the Three Ninjas movie. Remember that? The three little ninja kids back in the 80s? He had written this damn film, and it had made a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. So he invites Ed Emanuel to come down and see the play, and Ed had written this Civil War piece.
Oh, my God.
So
the movie
we put
sucks,
that on.
By the way.
I was doing it was a multiple role thing. I was doing like 18 different roles in the show. So Ed sees the show, and he's like, scholarship. He said, look, he said, right now you're a big fish in a small pond. We'll make you a big fish in a big pond. And I was like, deal. So I took the scholarship, man. And he was like, I'll be back in 2 weeks. So he flies out. 2 weeks later, this guy flies back in. He drives down to where I'm living. I'm out shooting ball with my cousins and friends. He pulls up, and he gets out of the car, and I was like, I walk over to him. I was like, hey, man, I'll walk you in. You can meet my parents. He's like, no, I got it. I was like, okay. So I keep shooting ball. He walks in the house, stays about 15 minutes, walks out, white as a sheet, doesn't say a word to me, gets in the car, leaves. I don't hear from him again.
Wow.
Had no idea what went on. Takes me a couple weeks. What happened is my mom, he walks in and introduces himself. My mom pulls a knife on the guy. I will kill you. You are not going to steal my goddamn son from me. Scares the guy to death. He bugs out. And
wow,
kind of broke my spirit at that point. I was like, okay. So
that's fucked.
Went into just full-fledged into scams, crimes, everything else. I had already been, when I was a minor, I'd already been kind of brought up on that side of the family with the crimes that they were doing. My mom was, drug trafficking, the pimp stuff, illegally mining coal, charity fraud.
Illegally mining.
Yeah, wildcatting coal. So
can you explain that?
Yeah. So to properly mine coal, you have to get a permit. All right. Eastern Kentucky, a lot of people they can't afford the permits. They can get them a piece of equipment. You get a dozer and a loader or whatever you're going to get, or an auger or what have you. So you start mining, but you don't get the permit. So you don't have to you don't have to pay. Back then it was like $3,500 for a 2-acre permit or $5,000 for a 2-acre permit. Let you strip mine the coal on that. Then you have to pay for the reclamation on top of that. So once you uncover the pit, take the coal out, you have to cover back up the pit, sow grass, make sure everything is environmentally friendly. You got a silt pond, everything else at that point.
So the whole idea is you buy an acre of land or some area of land, and then there's a whole process you're supposed to go through.
Entire process.
How many people are involved in a mining? The smallest number of people required for mining operation?
You can do it with 3 or 4 people.
Okay.
So you've got your loader operator, you've got your dozer operator. You need you can farm out the trucking to someone if you need that, or a trucking company if you need to do that. Then you've got whoever owns the business as well. So very few people can run an operation like that and profit fairly well, as long as you don't have to do the reclamation, all that crap on top of it. All right. The reclamation gets pretty expensive. So if you're uncovering a pit of coal, a pit, so a ton of coal is basically about 36 cubic inches, is what 2,000 pounds of coal weighs if you're in Eastern Kentucky, because it's at the weight of the bituminous coal and everything.
The fact that you know this is awesome. the fact that you know exactly the volume of a ton of coal, I mean, this is great.
Yeah, you learn this shit, right? You can rattle this shit off. So you uncover the pit, and then you've got to sell the pit. Well, the thing is that where are you going to sell the coal? Well, you sell it to one of these other coal tipples that knows that they're buying the shit illegally. So back then, a ton of coal was, they'd give you like $36 per ton is what that is. And you'd have to go out and you'd test the BTUs on it. You'd take a sample to the lab, test the BTUs. You'd take that into the company. British thermal unit. So you'd test what the BTU on the coal was.
How pure the coal is.
How pure the coal is. What BTU it burns at. Back then, a good BTU was around 12.9. was what you'd get. All right. So 12.9 coal, $36 a ton. You'd take that sample over to the coal tipple. They'd say, okay, we'll buy this for you. How many trucks you got or how many tons you got? And you'd say, this is what we've got. Then you'd hire the trucking company, and where you get it out, because you've got the agents that are looking for you by this point, because the people that you've bought the rights to, whoever the landowner is. You said you're going to give them $2 a ton or whatever this is. Well, the other people there, are you paying them off or are you not? Well, if you're not paying them off, guess what? They know your ass is mining it illegally. They're going to report you. Well, all of a sudden, you've got all these inspectors that are coming around and everything. And, hey, we know what you're doing.
It's like a mafia
So they're
operation.
looking for you to get the pit out. So when do you get the pit out? Right in the dead of night. So, you're loading it up 2 o'clock in the morning, hauling its ass out is what you're doing. You sell it out from there. So,
and your mom ran operations like this?
Yeah.
And you said you worked the mine too when you were younger?
Learned how to run a loader, run a dozer, learned how to clean off a pit, everything like that. So this is the lifestyle you grow up in. You learn how to do this stuff.
Excuse me.
So knew how to do charity fraud as well, insurance fraud. So
charity fraud. Can we break down some of these are
charity fraud? It's much more romantic than what it sounds. It was basically standing beside the road with a sign and a bucket, taking up collections for homeless shelters, for abused women, for children, stuff like that. Then later on, I branched off. When I started off on my own, I would set up my own charity company and do some telemarketing and go on by and collect checks and things like that.
We're going to talk about that. But actually, can we just step back and
1 second, the camera break
talk about
here.
your mom and your dad? Given all of that, given all the abuse, the complex ways that she played with love, to see how far she can push you and the people around her, and they still love her. Today, do you love her?
I called my dad yesterday. My dad, he's dying now. He's got a heart condition. He's not going to get the operation to fix it. So he's like, fuck it, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, I looked at him because, hell, I'm 52 now. And prior to 52, I'd have been like, no, you need to do this. But I looked at him and I was like, I understand. You're done. And so he's not going to get the operation. I was talking to him yesterday and he asked me, he's like, have you seen your mom? And I was like, Dad, I've not talked to her for about 2 years. And I told him, I was like, I love my mom, but my mom is not a good person. She's not. And
Wow.
He
That's
told me, I was
intense.
talking to him on the phone yesterday, and he told me that it took him several years to really understand that. You know, he loved her too, but it takes, when you're getting abused like that, especially my dad came from a good family, everything else, and, upstanding family. And I think that when you're that victim of abuse, you've never seen it before, you've never encountered it, and then it happens. Well, you're like that frog in water all of a sudden. You get to the point where it gradually increases until how do you get out of it? Everybody else sees what's happening, but you don't. I grew up in that environment, though. So it took me a long time to come to terms with that. My sister came to terms with it long before I did. My sister, she's been a decade without talking to my mom. Like, she had tried to commit suicide. I didn't know that. What got me so bad is she said at one point that she always thought someone was going to come in and save us. And my response, just immediate response, not even thinking about it, my response was, well, Denise, I knew no one ever was. And looking at things now, I think that's where our paths diverged. Me, it was, if you're going to do it, if anybody's going to take care of you, you got to take care of yourself.
You're on your own.
You're on your own. It's up to you. And Denise has always been that child that has expected someone to come in and save her.
Well, and almost like, it's all going to be okay. Somebody.
Yeah, and I knew it wasn't. No, you go
unless you
make it okay, it ain't going to be okay. So it was.
Are you able to forgive her, your mom?
My boundary with my mom, the reason I've not spoken with her, over 2 years ago, I started this legal career of mine. I've been the guy who has, I spent a lot of time thinking about my past and those choices and what brought those choices around. So I'm big about taking responsibility for my actions. I truly am. I think it's really important you have to do that. Well, my mom, not so much. So I was talking to her, and I would start saying, she would start the conversation talking about she didn't understand why Denise wouldn't speak to her anymore. That was one of her tropes. So, and my response started to become, well, because you were the abuser and you spent your life doing that to her, so it's more healthy for her not to talk to you.
So she's still not able to see the flaws in her ways of the past.
No, not at all.
And there are some people who have a very difficult time with self-reflection to a degree where in some cases it almost feels like it's pathological and something they're incapable of engaging in. I don't know if you've ever had anyone like this in your life, but I have, where it's just this person is incapable of self-reflection or any degree of change whatsoever.
So my ultimatum to my mom was, look, when you're able to admit that you abuse the people in your life, accept that responsibility, and be able to discuss it with me, we'll have a talk. Other than that, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So for the first year, it was, calling, cussing my wife out, cussing me out. I don't need you, blah, 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 blah. And then finally it started to taper off, and she's never really contacted me after that point.
Your dad is dying. What do you take from the way he's taken on death? Just saying, fuck it.
It's the man.
And what have you learned from your dad? What do you love about your dad?
He's one of these guys that, like I told him. I told my dad about the abuse and everything else. And there was a point. So, I told you about the elevator stuff. But before that, man, it was... it took me 40 years to talk about that, but it also took me 40 years to talk about, there was a point that my mom and dad would leave the house, and I would urinate in the floor. All right, and
As a out of anger.
no idea why. All right, but I would piss on the carpet. Carpet pissers like the Lebowski, right? So it really tied the room together, dude.
It really tied the room together.
I was talking about that, and this lady comes up to me after the presentation, and she had a career previous to that where she dealt with abused kids, and she told me, she's like, Brett, she's like, it's a control mechanism. The only control you had was that, and she's like, kids do that, and I was like, so I'm not unique? She's like, no, you're not unique in that. So that, you know, this whole history of abuse, Denise dealt with it by drinking, by trying to commit suicide, things like that. And then finally she escapes. I'm the kid that didn't. And not only that, my wife pointed out to me that, it's that Eastern Kentucky mentality stuff. You know, the male's expected to do things. So with me, it was almost like I stepped up to take part in those crimes so that Denise didn't have to. And she was able to avoid all that. Other than that one shoplifting stuff, Denise doesn't break the law anymore. She goes off to be she's a good parent. She's an angry parent. She's a good parent. She's a teacher, good citizen overall. I was just the guy that kept right on going with it.
Kept on going. So let me ask you about that. So your life of cybercrime. In describing some of the things you did or knew about, you said, quote, I once stole several $1,000s worth of coins from a family trying to sell them to put a new roof on their home. Another time, I sent a counterfeit cashier's check to a victim and he ended up being arrested for it. I lied to family, friends, everyone I knew. I was a truly despicable person.
True.
One of my Ukrainian associates' script had someone who owed him money kidnapped and tortured. He posted pictures of it online. Another member, Iceman, used to flood his enemies' email addresses with child pornography, then called the police on them. That's some stories. Can you tell some of these stories that stand out to you that are particularly despicable or representative or interesting when you look back at that defined your approach and who you were at that time?
Let me say that I did not care about my victim. All right, I cared about me. Is what I cared about. It's rough to admit that. You know that you don't give a shit what you're doing to anybody else. You only care about you. But that's the truth of the matter. I didn't care about the victims. The lady that wasn't even at the beginning of my career as a cyber criminal. That was right at the last of it.
Which lady?
The coin lady. I was by that point. Shadow Crew had made the front cover of Forbes, August of 04. October 26th of 04, Secret Service had shut us down. 33 people arrested, 6 countries in 6 hours. I was the guy that was publicly mentioned as getting away. What happened was I was the guy who was, I had kind of invented this crime called tax return identity theft, and was stealing a lot of money. I went through all my stateside savings, and Shadow Crew gets shut down. I don't have any way to come in with any money, so I start running counterfeit cashier's checks, defrauding people with that, having them send products or bullion collections, what have you, by COD, collect on delivery, and I would pay with it with a counterfeit cashier's check. This lady was on eBay. She had been collecting these silver coins all of her life. You know, the U.S. currency used to be, the coins used to be silver. So she had a whole collection of these things, like, I don't know, 80, 90 pounds of this stuff. And I'm a very good social engineer. So convinced her that I was a legitimate person, that, you know, hey, send it to COD. You can use my FedEx account to do that, or my UPS account to do that. I'll pay with a cashier's check. You can take it in, same as cash. She believed that. She was even on the ad, and we talked on the phone and everything else. She had told me that she was a single parent, and it was the only money that she had to put a roof on the house for her and her kids. And I didn't give a damn. What was more important was me at that point.
Can I ask you a question about the social engineering aspect? So maybe specifics like the methodology, email, you said phone. Maybe you could discuss this process from a bigger philosophical perspective of what is it about human beings that makes them possible to be socially engineered, to be victims of fraud?
So, first, let me say that I became a social engineer as a child. All right.
If I can, I want to preempt this answer because like I have an answer to this question. Much like there are 0 days in operating systems or exploits in operating systems, there's exploits in human behavior. There's ways that you can manipulate human behavior or take certain social cues, and it's something that just comes very naturally to people, much like a spider can just naturally weave like a complex web, so can a young child weave a complex story to manipulate someone to get a specific outcome, right? So this is something that's like, yeah.
Because the adults in my in my environment as a child, I had to know exactly what they were thinking and be able to try to manipulate that for survival. So I became a social engineer as for survival initially. All right, and one of the things that I've seen with a lot of cyber criminals is the exact same thing. The really expert ones, they become a social engineer as a child, then later on they use those tools to victimize others. All right,
which is fascinating because in order to understand what others are thinking, you have to be extremely good at empathy. So you have to like really put yourself in the shoes of the other person. And yet, in order to do cybercrime, you have to not care about the pain that might cause them once you...
Or you have to be able to like externalize that pain, or not really see that what you're doing as being something that is like painful or brutal to someone. To give you an example, Panasonic Shockwave CD player. When I was a kid, I owned one of these, a Panasonic Shockwave CD player. Quite sick, quite a sick device. These headphones that you see here, there was a version of them that actually had like a little vibration rumble thing. It was a little gimmick to get people to get really excited about, oh, my headphones are so much bass, my headphones are rumbling. I used these headphones in grade 6 or 7. Grade 7. I used these headphones in grade 7, and Mac text-to-speech, I brought up a notepad. I wrote, hello, this is Mark Smith's grandmother. He is sick today. And then I said, hey, computer, can you, like, text-to-speech this? Can you say this for me? And I would just have essentially a soundboard, and I would select what I wanted to say and press a button while I had the headphones pressed up against the microphone of the phone. So anyway, super super interesting that like kids when they're young learn these types of social engineering hacks and figure them out. And then when you realize that technology, like any other tool, can be used for a variety of different purposes, then you start to learn all kinds of new tricks and neat little exploits
to manipulate them. So you have to empathize and yet not care.
Exactly, and I would argue that is not a sociopath, because a cyber criminal, and I was no different, most cyber criminals justify those actions. So the justification becomes what's important. With me, the justification was, well, I did it for my family, did it for my wife, did it for my stripper girlfriend. Yeah. So, and I believe those justifications.
I heard that one.
Yeah, so
because I care about love a lot.
Yeah. So the big picture of that is trust. How do you establish trust with a potential victim? All right. Now, I would argue online that trust is established through a combination of technology, tools, social engineering. Yeah. All right. So we trust our tech. We trust our cell phones. We trust our laptops. A lot of times we don't understand how they operate, but we trust the news that comes across the line. We trust the phone numbers that show up.
Well, he nailed it. I was literally just about to use this as an example, like a way that you can exploit trust very easily, or try to gain someone's trust or manipulate trust is, let's say that I want to call my friend, and I want to convince my friend that I am the Canadian Revenue Agency, the CRA. I want to convince her that I am calling from the CRA about an account issue. Well, I can use a spoofing application on my phone, get the number from the CRA call center just off the internet, and basically make it look like I'm calling. So if I talk to that person and say I'm from somewhere, there's all of a sudden an increased level in trust that, oh, this must be someone from such an organization or such a blah, 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 blah.
We trust IP addresses if we're advanced enough to look at an IP address or a domain or anything else like that. Criminals use tools to manipulate that. Spoofed phone numbers, spoofed browser fingerprints, whatever that may be, whatever the tool may be. Then that lays a base level of trust. At that point, you shoot in with the social engineering and lay whatever story that is in order to manipulate that victim to act not out of reason, but out of emotion all of a sudden.
This is fascinating about the way humans interact with the world, which is you're almost too afraid to not trust the world. You have to find a balance. You have this. You have a lot of sort of conspiracy theories now about distrusting institutions and thinking like everything around us. It's like I've been listening to people who believe the Earth is flat, and that conspiracy theory is fascinating to me because it basically says that you can't trust anybody.
Right.
That like everything you hear is a lie. So that's one. You can live that life. Or you can live a life where you're just naively trusting everything. And we as humans have to, because that life is kind of full of happiness if nobody screws you over.
Right.
Because you meet people with the joyful heart and you get excited and all that kind of stuff. But if you do that too much, you're going to get burned. So you have to find some kind of balance in terms of optimizing happiness where you trust, but verify, and on the internet that becomes really tricky. You're almost too afraid to distrust everything because you'll never get anything done on the internet. But then if you trust too much, you can get screwed over. And so the social engineering comes in where you're like, I'm not sure if I should trust this. You kind of help them build the narrative where it's like, it's good.
It's good.
It's good.
And and a lot of the times that social engineering is just feeding into what the victim wants to believe.
Yeah.
All right. It's not really coming up with a brand new story at all. It's just knowing what that victim is, what the motivations of that victim is, feeding into it at that point. So you have to, again, that social engineer has to almost immediately know what's driving that person that they're talking about. If I'm working on a phone, talking to someone over the phone, I have to know within seconds what I need to say, how I need to act to interact with that customer service agent or whoever I'm talking to.
And sometimes, there might be an opportunity, like if you are targeting a particular individual for these types of activities, you might be able to, do some recon, essentially, or some assessment of like, okay, this is how I'm going to talk to this, how I'm going to approach them with this situation. But more often than not, you don't have that luxury. And so like someone who is good with improv or good on their feet or able to kind of, do the dance, it's really important to be able to get a very quick read on people, and often you're talking to people over the phone, so you don't even have the benefit of body language, right? You're literally just have a conversation with a person to be able to figure out like what's this person's vibe and how do I kind of like hack my way through their personality. What's interesting though as well is not having access to body language could also be a benefit, right? Because depending on how you carry your voice or how you talk, you can almost emulate body language without them having that visual capacity of being like, oh, you don't look like how you sound at all. You're clearly trying to impersonate someone else.
Another line.
So fascinating because you truly are empathizing with the other person. What is it? This businessman, Steven Schwartzman. I've talked to a few times. He mentioned this thing that, the way you build deep relationships is you really kind of notice the things that people are telling you, like what they want and what they're bothered by. What are their big problems in their lives? Because everybody's saying that all the time, and most of us are just ignoring it.
Right.
You
but
really
if you take the time to listen, you know somebody at that point.
Yeah.
Absolutely you do. Then you have to be able to dismiss it.
Dismiss it after.
You're looking for that just to see how I can manipulate that, is what you're trying to do.
Not be their friend.
So The lady was one story. Another truly despicable story. We'll get to script in a second.
Yeah.
But another truly despicable story. We were one of the really first groups that started phishing attacks.
What's phishing?
So that is a social engineering attack.
PH, by the way.
Yeah,
Phishing.
PH. That's another social engineering attack. That's sending that fake email out that looks like it's coming from a website or your financial organization or whatever, and saying, "Hey, we've got a security problem. We need you to update your account information." Well, back then, no one had ever seen a phishing attack, so you could ask for all the information. You were getting just complete identity profiles on a phishing email. Nowadays, you can't do that. Nowadays, you look for basically credentials because everyone is aware of phishing. But back then, it was complete information. We had fished out, 200,000 E-Trade accounts. That's what we had the login credentials
login password, yeah.
Login password, complete, social, date of birth, mother's maiden, account information, everything else. So we had access to those E-Trade accounts. E-Trade initially had no security in place, so you could cash out the account, ACH the money out to whatever account you wanted to, went through just fine. Ate them alive on that for 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, because, so for example, I have a trading account, and any time that I do a particular type of sale, not only does it notify the hell out of me through an email address, but often requires two-factor authentication before it go through. But it's a great place to pause on his face.
E-Trade got to the point where you couldn't do any ACH coming out. They locked everything down. Well, you're still sitting on thousands of E-Trade accounts. How do you make money on that?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so what you do is you find some fat cat that's got his retirement, invested in blue chips. Same time, you find a penny stock. You open up a brand new account, buy into that penny stock, cash the fat cat out, buy into that same penny stock, pump and dump schemes all of a sudden. So you're destroying people's retirement accounts for just a few $1,000s. Bam, bam, bam. And of course, E-Trade's response is, not our problem. It's your problem. You shouldn't have given up your password or what have you at that point. And you still see that issue today with Zelle scams and things like that.
That's so
Which scam?
Zelle. So, the instant payment that
so it's the same kind of operation,
same type
with different payment mechanisms.
You find an easy way to exploit a system, and typically the financial organization, not our problem. Our system's secure. It's the humans. It's their errors. Well,
wow.
Not really. You've got some culpability in that, and you're just trying to avoid paying the part of the bill is what's going on.
One of the things, just to stay on fishing for a bit, is it really makes me sad because there's been people on all kinds of platforms, including YouTube comments, but emails too. They figured out emails somehow. So people are now seeing the followers of this particular podcast who are fans. They're finding them on platforms like LinkedIn and YouTube and so on, and they are figuring out ways to get to those people by another channel,
right?
Which I suppose it seems more authentic to those people.
Right.
So they send them an email from what looks like me, and with this loving the interesting thing, the emails sound like something I would write. So these aren't even at this stage.
There's sophisticated targeting attacks. I follow one of my favorite comedians is Tom Green, and he recently, or not long ago, posted on his Instagram a picture of a message saying, "Hey, I'm Tom Green's assistant, and Tom is looking to engage with fans and blah blah blah." So people actually send people who follow celebrities a fake message trying to think that hey, the celebrity wants to have you out for this. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. Have you out for this super posh VIP event. It's only going to cost you $200 to book the ticket. Blah blah blah. You send them the money, never hear from them again. You know what I mean? So there is a lot of really interesting, social engineering attacks that are targeted at particular influencers' fan bases, whether they be really large or even more niche, smaller communities where they're well, we can't be getting scammed because we're a community of only a couple thousand people. Why would anyone target us, right?
It's not even, it doesn't feel automated, or if it's automated, it's there's a human in the loop that's really fine tuning it to the specific, or maybe I'm very predictable, but it's very loving in the way I would write a message.
Well, and so think about that. All right. So when phishing first comes out, you could look at the language of the text or the website and say, if you were paying attention, that's so okay. So that's not an English speaker who wrote that typically. All right.
Typically, it's people whose like English is a second language, and so you instantly have tells in terms of just like really bad sentence structure, punctuation, the misuse of words. Again, there's stuff where you're like, this doesn't seem like an email from Microsoft or from Netflix, you know. Oops.
But as time has went on, as the awareness of what a phishing attack looks like, we have people that are sitting down now and making sure that the language is proper. It gets worse than that, though, if you look at business email compromise. All right, so the way a business email compromise typically works is the attacker will find a payroll person, find a CEO. He will fashion a spear phishing email, that's a phishing attack that's targeting one specific individual. All right. So he'll fashion a spear phishing email. And the way he does that is he pulls all the information he possibly can on that person, all right, that CEO. Maybe he'll spear that CEO just to get their login credentials to their email, just to read the emails. And he'll go in there and he'll start reading all these emails. He'll specifically read the emails to the payroll department, see what that relationship is. Are they talking about their kids, talking about relationships, talking about vacation? What are they?
I've been involved in a response to this exact scenario where the VP of finance had been spearphished. Someone had basically gotten into his account, and from that account they were able to send a shit ton of emails to people inside the company, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, did you just send me an email telling me to send you $10,000 to this like offshore account? And he's like, I absolutely did not send you that. And it didn't take very long for us to uncover what happened, but like we have no idea how long they were actually in his email and how much stuff they saw.
What are they talking about? How are they talking? Are they friendly? Are they sterile? What are they doing? All right. So then he decides, well, I'm going to go ahead and spearfish the payroll department as well. So then he spearfishes in, gets those credentials. At the same time, he creates a Unicode domain in whatever the company name is. All right. So instead of that English alphabet I, he's got that Russian letter that looks like an I, but without the dot on top. All right. Comes back into the email, into the payroll email, blocks the real CEO's email, replaces that with the Unicode email that he's got, and then sends out a message using the correct language, the correct relationships, everything else, and says, hey, we're updating our account status. I need you to send this payment instead of over here. They've set up a new account. Send all payments over here now. And that is business email compromise in a nutshell. All right. Works great.
Probably the larger the organization, the more susceptible to that kind of attack, because there's a like a distribution of responsibility.
There is and there isn't. Some organizations, like some that I have worked in, have a very high level of control, because they have zero appetite for any risk whatsoever. So they're like, under no circumstances do we fuck around. So like every single payment has to go through every type of change or anything like this would instantly, it's going to take us a couple of days because we have to vet this, we have to check this is all legit, blah, 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 blah. And that happens in particularly large organizations. All of that being said, everything else he is about to say is true in the sense that there is like a distribution of personalities in an organization, which thus distributes your susceptibility to the different types of cyber attacks.
Where you're more likely to believe that, okay, this other person is responsible. I'm sure they secured everything.
Absolutely.
I'm okay listening to this.
Right. So that's business email compromise, and it's those crimes, and it's one of the things you see about cybercrime. Cybercrime is not really sophisticated. It's not. The attacks are not sophisticated. The stat is 90% of every single attack uses a known exploit. It's not It's not 0-day attacks.
Yeah.
They're out there. But if you're a criminal waiting on a 0-day to profit, you're going to starve to death. The meat and potatoes are at 90%, known exploits.
And then the rest is, well, you're saying it's, maybe you mean it's not technically sophisticated, but it's social engineering sophisticated.
Very sophisticated on that end. Very
I
sophisticated.
mean, it's a fascinating study of human
That
psychology.
establishment of trust, and then using that trust to defraud that victim. That is something.
I wish, obviously, all of these folks are really good at hiding. I wish you could tell their stories in the way, which is why you're fascinating, is you're able to tell these stories now, because it is studying human nature by
I will say that like part of the reason why a lot, I mean, it's kind of like a magician doesn't want to reveal his tricks because then not it devalues his currency, right? Other people can then go and do it, and thus in this world, if like, hey, I tell you all my secrets and my tricks and how I do things, then you're going to be able to build applicable defenses against those tactics.
exploiting it. But you get to understand like our weak points, our hope, our desire to trust others. Also, sort of the weak points and the failures of digital systems when at scale humans have to connect.
Right.
It's fascinating. This is a weird question, asking for a friend. Is spearfishing itself illegal? What's the legality here?
Oh, it's all illegal. Absolutely, it is. But
Is it absolute? So here's what. Okay, let me construct an example. So, if my friend were to spearfish like a CEO, right, and get their information, and after they get control, say of their Twitter account, they tweet something loving and positive. What's the crime?
unauthorized access of advice.
What would be the punishment, do you think?
That becomes questionable. So no monetary loss, or was there a monetary loss? Probably not. All right. So you have to figure out who the victim is before charges are pressed. Now, the crime would be unauthorized access. All right. But no real victim on that, unless, the person whose account you took over takes, exception to that. No monetary loss.
So there's not really standard like fines.
Probably nothing's going to happen. Right.
Right. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting because it's so when I got the ransomware, when I got with the 0-day attack on the QNAP NAS, they basically say the criminal is QNAP, the company, for having so many security vulnerabilities. They're like, you are the victim of QNAP's incompetence. That's the way they kind of phrase it.
And see, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. So SolarWinds.
It's just because you find someone's door unlocked doesn't mean it's like, well, I mean, it's like oh, your lock doesn't work, so sue the lock company that I walked in and stole. It's like, or you could have just not walked in and took all that shit or done that. Oh, SolarWinds. SolarWinds is a great. Oh, I love this. Pausing on this guy's face is great. He really should have been an actor.
Yeah. So I've got a 130-page class action lawsuit printed out at the house. I've been going through it. That catalogs how SolarWinds lied for years about their vulnerabilities, and they lied to investors. The people who came in, the auditors who they would hire, would not pay attention to them when they said, you've got these issues. They would say, go away. Shit like that for years until SolarWinds, the attacks become apparent.
I didn't know that. That's fucked.
My view on that is that the only person responsible for the crime are the criminals who did the attacking, the actual criminals, not SolarWinds. Now, does that mean that SolarWinds isn't all fucked up? They are, and there needs to be some accounting in place.
Respect.
But the only individual, the only people responsible for crime are the criminals, and that's either online, in the physical world, what have you. You could be being an idiot is not a crime. Being criminally negligent is, and I think that SolarWinds is certainly responsible. Not responsible. They're culpable for what happened.
Can you actually tell folks about SolarWinds? What is it?
I love this.
What are some interesting things that you're aware of?
SolarWinds was it provided a backbone of security for hundreds, thousands of different companies. if you looked at a lot of security companies were using SolarWinds that would allow you to get a snapshot of the entire system that they were working on. So what happens is you get a Russian group that comes in and they basically they hack into SolarWinds and get access to it, and it allows them to view every single thing. I mean every single thing about every single client that SolarWinds had at that point. So entire snapshots of all the IP that was going on, all the emails, all the communications, every single secret that was going on with those companies. If a company had software like Microsoft, it allowed them to look at the source code of everything that was going on. I mean, it's just a complete and total nightmare.
Wow.
All right, and something that you are not going to recover from. You're not. I mean, it's done at that point. There's not been a lot of news lately about it, but the fact of the matter is that's the type of attack that's a catastrophic attack.
So there's a huge amount of information that was read, saved elsewhere probably.
Oh, yeah.
And so now there's people sitting on information.
Absolutely. So think about one of the attack vectors has been Microsoft Outlook 365, things like that. This allowed the
None of that telecom companies. They were able to get into major telecom companies. And once you're there, you have access to a variety of stuff like phone records, billing information, text messages.
Hackers to look at the source codes of that. So they have the source code now, so they can go through it line by line. Where are the vulnerabilities? Let's find new vulnerabilities, new 0 days. I said 0 days aren't common, but this opens up an entire new threat surface all of a sudden.
Wow.
So it's a completely catastrophic attack. Once all the chips are down, everything's tallied up, people are going to be like, yeah, we're done. We're done.
Yeah. All right, this whole computer thing, we tried
We're
it.
done.
It's over. The computers are done. Throw the computers out.
Terrifying because, so you're saying that there's not been obvious big negative impact from that yet. So, but like,
there's been a lot of negative impact, but we're just starting.
Right. So the capacity.
It'll take years for like the ripple of effect to that to actually take hold and for people to start exploiting what they find out in the wild.
Destruction is huge here. How much involvement from nation states do you think there is on this?
It's interesting. So you've got Iran, you've got North Korea, China, Russia. You got the big four. You also got Brazil. Yeah. You've got all these other countries that are interested in the United States as well. Nation states are interesting depending on who the nation state is. All right, so Russia's very good about working with the type of criminal that I used to be. They'll enlist these guys and steal information or what have you. Then Russia will take the information they want to, and they'll basically go off and sell whatever you want to and make some money. China's all about IP. North Korea is about stealing money because they really don't know what the hell else to do right now. But
so North Korea is actively involved in cybercrime.
Absolutely, they've stolen a shitload of Bitcoin, everything else. So absolutely, they're actively involved with that. Very, very skilled attackers, very skilled. But even if you look at, I told you that stat about 90%. All right, so even though SolarWinds is going to be the number one attack, the follow-up to that is this NotPetya attack that happened. And so that was the most sophisticated attack launched by the Russian Sandworm group using all known exploits throughout. So it's not, you're right in the sophistication is typically not technical sophistication, but it's that social engineering sophistication. How do you get these things put together in line to attack and succeed?
But when you get access to the source code, that's where technical sophistication could really do a lot of damage.
And that's when you find out real quick, that's what separates the men from the boys in this game. All right, because all of a sudden I don't have to worry about social engineering. I've got source codes and I've got professionals that are looking at that, and that's your ass.
Which then enables probably even more powerful social engineering methods too. I mean, it's just a cascade of... is this terrifying to you, by the way? This world that we're living in, as we put more and more of ourselves on the internet, into the metaverse, that there's so many more attack vectors on our well-being.
What's terrifying to me, I used to preach it on Shadow Crew, is the idea that the perception of truth is more important than the truth itself. It doesn't matter what the facts are. It matters what I can convince you of. That's what's terrifying to me. So you look at deep fakes, you look at fake news, all the stuff that's going out, that becomes truly terrifying.
The erosion of truth.
Maybe there's an angle where it's freeing if nothing is true and you can't trust anything.
But you see, we as human beings, we want to trust. We do. We need human interaction. And for that human interaction, you have to have a degree of trust.
But it's more like you let go of an idea of absolute truth and it more becomes like a blockchain style consensus. So you let go of like, you know what? There's this human dream. You get this on the internet. You get like facts as if there's at the bottom there's one turtle that's holding this like scroll that says these are the truths of the world. The problem is, I mean, maybe believing that is counterproductive. Maybe human civilization is an ongoing process of consensus. And so it's always going to be, everything is shrouded in, you can call them lies, or you can call them inaccuracies, or you can call them delusions. It's constantly going to be a sea of lies and delusions. But our hope is to, over time, develop bigger and bigger islands of consensus that allows us to live a stable and happy society. Don't call it true. Call it a stable consensus that creates a high quality of life for the inhabitants of the island.
I like it. I like it. We're going to agree.
And then don't use outlook. No, I'm just kidding. So maybe step back. You mentioned I'd love to talk about Shadow Crew. Maybe this is the right time to actually. Yeah, let's go to Shadow Crew because it's such a fascinating story. So tell me the story of building Shadow Crew, the precursor to today's darknet and darknet markets. This is why you're the original Godfather.
This is it. So I get married. I faked a car accident to get married. Got the money from that.
You're romantic.
I'm romantic. Like my dad, man. I'm the guy that, I get from mom, I get the criminal mindset. From dad, I get that don't want him to leave. So,
This guy is cute. I
get married.
Like his vibe. I really like his vibe.
I met this
What's
girl.
that story?
Dude, I was...
how did you fall in love there?
My first girlfriend was a preacher's daughter. And crazy over her, dated her for 5 years. And she figured out pretty quickly that, well, not quickly, it took her 5 years to figure out that Brett Johnson is not the man of God. I could talk it, but, more that agnostic than anything. She breaks up with me. So I was at the community college.
You'd make one hell of a preacher, by the way. Let's put.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
So, I've got that Langston Hughes problem. I'm looking for Jesus to show up, and he just doesn't. So I was at the community college, and I was a straight asshole. I was arrogant, conceited, everything else. And I had posted an advertisement on one of the billboards looking for an adult babysitter, hot blonde, come visit me in the library. Buddy of mine shows up, and he's like, Brett. And I was like, yeah. He's like, hottest girl in school, right down the hall. And I was like, serious? He's like, yeah. And I was like, let's go see. So I walk over, and there's these two guys that are hitting on her. So I just walk up, and me and Todd, that was my buddy, walk up, and I'm just sitting there and listening, and they're giving the spiel and everything, and she's just kind of taking it in. Finally, I looked over, and I was like, you want to get out of here? And one of the guys looks at me, he's like, hey, we're talking to her. And I was like, well, you're talking at her. You're not talking to her. I'm about to save her ass from you.
Damn, that's a smooth pickup line, by the way. If I've ever heard one, that's good. You want to get out of here?
So
sick. That's
start
a sick
dating,
move.
and she was the girl that screwed my brains out, man. And I head over heels. We got married 6 months later. 6 months.
That's what love does.
That's what it does. And she didn't know I was a crook. She had no idea. She knew I was very bright. She knew I did a lot of theater, stuff like that. Got a job at, I was in Hazard. There was no jobs to be had. So I got a job in Lexington because we were going to be moving to UK. Got a job in Lexington at Lexmark testing printer boards, circuit boards. So I would leave on a Thursday night, work 3 18-hour shifts at Lexmark, come back home on Monday. got married, faked a car accident to get the rest of the money that I needed to get married. And the faking on that, man, I had bought a Chevy Spectrum at a car auction, gave like $500 for it. My aunt had previously defrauded USAA insurance on a car accident, and she was telling me all about it. She's like, look, go down to this chiropractor, make sure you get the insurance where they'll pay for a rental car, they'll pay lost wages. I was like, they pay lost wages? She's like, yeah, they pay lost wages. I was like, She's like, by the way, you work for me. And I was like, I work for you. So,
And you get to define the wage, and you can also define how long you were unable to work.
Exactly. And the chiropractor will sign off on any damn thing. All right. So my cousin Ronnie, he figures out that he finds out I'm going to fake this car accident. So he comes to me. He's like, hey, man, can I get in on that? I was like, yeah, man, you get in on that. So this kid, he's 5 days younger than I am. This kid, he goes to the dentist the day that we're faking it, has a tooth pulled, tells the dentist not to numb it, not to stitch it, just pull it. So he shows up the day that we're driving out to fake the accident. He's got blood all over his shirt. He's still bleeding out of the mouth and everything else. I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, man, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm like, okay. So my mom, by this point, I'm living with my grandparents. My mom is up in the head of a hollow. So we're like, we'll just do it up there. We'll go act like we're visiting my mom. On the way back out, ran over a mountain. I was like, okay. So we go visit and everything. Come back out that night, run over the side of the hill. Me and Ronnie walk back up. Of course, it totals the car. Walk back to my mom's, acting like we've wrecked. She knows what time it is and everything else. And file the claims. So that gets the money to get married. And me and my wife moved from Hazard to Lexington. And I'm the kid that my crime usually, if I was a single guy, wouldn't break the law. Wouldn't. I would be all right, you know. But females involved, oh yeah, got to spend the money, got to show them gifts. Everything else was never enough to show love in some sort of healthy way. Always had to go overboard, and typically it was buying or stealing some sort of expensive crap.
So that was the thing. That was the way you show love, is by buying expensive gifts.
Or something overboard. Back then, with Susan initially, it was, don't worry about working. I got it. You just worry about going to school. She was a music major. I was like, you just worry about going to school. So don't worry about cooking and cleaning. I got it. So not only was I this guy that was going overboard, but I was kind of a control freak too, right? So no, I got it. So here I am, 60-hour-a-week job, 18-hour class load, cooking and cleaning. Something had to give. I quit the job. I couldn't do it. Quit the job and start back in fraud and trying to hide that from her at the same time. So it was initially telemarketing fraud. I was working at, the first job I had was a telemarketer at a cemetery selling grave sites. And then that
what
ended.
A job. That's crazy.
Went over to work for the Shriners Hospital. And it was a third-party company that was doing all the telemarketing, made really good money doing that. That job ended, and then they pivoted over to working with Kiwanis clubs, selling food baskets to the food banks and everything. So I stole the phone list and started up my own Kiwanis club and would do the telemarketing, go out twice a week and pick up checks. Well, what happened is I'm going out picking up checks, go knock on a door. Turns out one of the persons that I had called was a law enforcement officer. So he was like, who are you? I'm like, I'm with the Kiwanis Club. And he's like, no, you're not. So got arrested, spent 3 months in a county jail for theft by deception. Got out, and we had to move from Lexington back to Hazard and live with Susan's parents. They had gotten a desktop computer, HP, and I started surfing around online. Found eBay, and didn't really know how to make money on eBay. At about the same time, I'm committing low-level frauds online. I don't really talk about that in the past. The first time I've really talked about that, but I would pay for it with bad checks. So
more so not using a platform like eBay, more.
I would find somebody that had like a stereo system on eBay, something like that, and I'd pay for it with a bad check, and would rely on them not to chase me. because they were out of state at that point, and the dollar amounts were very low. So got the money to finally did those schemes enough to get the money to move back to Lexington. Got to Lexington, and by this point I'm doing these, like I said, these schemes on eBay, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way to make money on eBay. Got to be. So didn't really know how. One night I'm watching Inside Edition with Bill O'Reilly, and they're profiling Beanie Babies. So I'm sitting there watching, and the one they're profiling is this one called Peanut the Royal Blue Elephant, selling for $1,500 on eBay. I'm sitting there going like, shit, I need to find me a Peanut. So my initial thought was, well, there's got to be one in one of these Hallmark stores in Kentucky someplace. So I skipped class the next day, went out around all the Hallmark stores looking for Peanut. No, idiot. He's on eBay for $1,500. So after a few hours of that, I'm like, Turns out they had little gray Beanie Baby elephants for $8. Picked up one of those for $8. Stopped by Kroger on the way home, picked up a pack of blue Rit dye. Went home, tried to dye the little guy. So that was a nightmare. Turns out they're made out of polyester. Get them out of the bath. Looks like they've got the mange. And what happens is, I'm trying to dye the damn thing. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. That's just not going to work. So I got online, found a picture of a real one, posted it on eBay. And I was like, well, what I can do is I can claim that's the one I've got, and then maybe claim that it got messed up in the mail and work out like that. So posted a picture of a real one online. Woman thought I had the real thing. She wins the bid. That social engineering kicks in immediately. I didn't want to be on the defensive. I wanted to put her on the defensive. So as soon as she wins the bid, I send her a message. Hey, we've not done any business before. I don't even know if I can trust you. What I need you to do, protects us both, go down to the U.S. Postal Service, get 2 money orders totaling $1,500, send them to me, issued by the U.S. government. That way we're both protected. As soon as I get the money orders, I'll send you your animal. She believed that. Didn't ask any questions at all.
Wow.
She believed that. Sent me the money orders. I cashed them out.
That's it.
Sent her the creature. Immediately got a phone call. I didn't order this. My response, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And she got pissed. And she kept
Rightfully
calling.
so.
What I found out, and that's really the first lesson of cybercrime that most of these criminals, including self, learns. If you delay a victim long enough, just keep putting them off. A lot of them, they get exasperated, throw their hands in the air, walk away. You don't hear from them. And none of them, to this day, none of them complain to law enforcement. They eat it.
So it's
Because it's also embarrassing.
It's a mixture of like you're exhausted.
There's like shame and embarrassment when like you're like, fuck, I got scammed in the stupidest way. So why would I ever tell anyone what an idiot I am, right? And this is the same reason why a lot of there's an enormous amount of sexploitation that goes on the internet with both men and women. Mostly more women than men, but it does happen to men more frequently than you'd think. And it's insanely underreported. Like it's because again, people don't want to go through the shame of having to deal with that and have to like retell the story over and over again.
By the process, so it's just easier to walk away.
Also, just a heads up, I am downloading this replica app that we were looking at earlier to see what the deal is with having a virtual friend. We're gonna make Tarn Krasny in VR if we can. We'll see how that goes.
And second, almost like an embarrassment.
So there's a whole slew of reasons. All right, there's the exhaustion, certainly. There's the embarrassment. So if you look at it today, where does the embarrassment come from? Well, the media, family members, we're all very good about blaming the victim for crimes. Why would you click on the link? Why would you send money to somebody you don't know? Blah, blah, blah. So you've got that's going on. You've got the issue of who do you complain to? Back then, you didn't know. Do you complain to local police? Because she's in another state. So which local police do you complain to? Do you complain to the feds? Well, it's not, the dollar amounts aren't high enough to complain to feds. Feds are going to tell you to go local. Local's going to tell you, hey, it happened in Kentucky. Complain to them. Kentucky's going to tell you, well, shit, you're over there. We need you to come in. So there's this whole issue of jurisdiction, of the blame factor, everything else. So I got away with that crime and did it under my own name at that point. Kept going and got better at it. Started to understand how to hide identities, things like that. Started selling pirated software. Pirated software led into installing mod chips. It was for the initial pirated software was Sega Saturn PlayStation 1. Well, you had to have a mod chip in those to play the pirated discs. So I started selling and installing mod chips. That led into installing mod chips into cable television boxes so you could watch all the pay-per-view, which in turn led into programming satellite DSS cards, those 18-inch RCA satellite systems. Pull the card out of it, program it, turns on all the channels. Started doing that.
Can we just pause? Mm-hmm. That is very entrepreneurial. So, just technically, so there's laws and rules that you're breaking nonstop. So there's also legitimate ways of doing that, which is break the rules of the conventions of the past. That's the first principles thing. That's what Elon Musk and his ilk do all the time.
Right.
That is guts and brilliance. But when it's crossing the lines of the law, actually sometimes the law is outdated. The thing is, as a human being, you have to then compute the ethical damage you're doing, like ethically the damage you're doing about other human beings. That is fundamentally the thing that you're breaking, is you're adding to the suffering in the world in one way or another, and you're justifying it. But in terms of me sort of as an engineer, that is some gutsy thinking. That's how Woz and Steve Jobs thought.
Sure.
That's innovation. And maybe just think if you can introspect your thinking process here, this is a new. I like how you remember that it's an HP. This is a totally new thing to you. Computers is yet another domain. How are you figuring these puzzles out? Presumably mostly alone.
Alone.
When you were thinking through these problems, is there? This is a strange question to ask, but what is your thinking process? What is your approach to solving these problems?
So the approach is you do something, and you fuck it up, and you think back, okay, how do I fix that? So you fix that aspect, you commit the crime again, and it goes a little bit further, and it screws up. Okay, how do I fix that? What's the issue on that? How do I fix that?
So there's not a deep design thinking like
later on it becomes that. Once you lay that groundwork of the way these schemes are working, all right, it becomes that, and you can apply that to other things in cybercrime as a whole, all right. But initially, it's basically trial and error. You've got a problem. How do you solve that problem? All right. So I'm committing these crimes under my name. How do I solve that? Well, one of the first principles that we started to teach on Shadow Crew is all crimes should begin with identity theft. That's one of the main first principles that a lot of people to this day still don't really get. All right, why would I commit a crime under my name if I can do it under your name? So that's one of the big buffers, and that takes trial and error to get to that point where you start to understand that's the way crime should operate if you're a criminal. All right, but with me, it's trial and error. It's that childhood where that mindset is kind of ingrained in you, where you're looking for ways, non-traditional ways of getting around things or getting through things.
I mean, one of the questions I'll probably ask this later is, there's also a unique aspect to the outcome of what you were doing, which is you didn't get caught for a very long time.
Right.
We'll talk about why that is. And the thing is, it's so interesting. All crime probably to be effective, should start with identity theft.
Right.
I like that identity theft, because identity theft can take so many forms.
Right.
So yes, so Shadow Crew. So as we started with love.
So now we're doing these schemes online. I'm programming these satellite DSS cards, and one of the interesting things, and you still see that to this day, is something will happen that will create an industry for criminals. All right. So what happened is Canadian judge rules about the same time that I'm doing these satellite cards. Canadian judge comes out and says, hey, it's legal for my citizens to pirate those signals. And his reasoning was, since RCA doesn't sell the systems up here, my citizens can pirate it. Okay. So what happens is overnight, about the same time,
have
PayPal
any
comes into play.
diseases?
So PayPal's coming right online at about the same time. Overnight, little cottage industry pops up in the United States. You go down to Best Buy, buy the system for $100, take it out in the parking lot, open system up, open box up, pull the system out, pull the card out, throw the system away, program the card, ship its ass to Canada, $500 a pop. Started doing that. Business is good. Making, $3,000-$4,000 a week doing that. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Have so many orders, I can't fill all the orders, and quickly think to myself, why do I need to fill any of them? They're in Canada. I'm down here. Who are they going to complain to? Because I already found out people don't complain. All right, they're not going to complain to anybody. So I start
especially in Canada.
Especially in Canada. And I'm having them send money. That's when PayPal's first into play. And it amazes me that everybody is using PayPal. It's like, you don't even have to really ask. They're like, can we pay by? Yeah, you can pay all day long by PayPal. And PayPal had no clue what they were doing.
This is truly like talking to an AI.
It's like, okay. So they're sending money to PayPal. I'm having the PayPal cashed out to bank accounts in my name at that point. And I get scared because by that point I'm still in $4,000 to $6,000 a week.
This is hilarious.
And I'm like, somebody's going to be looking at money laundering. So get it in my head. I'm like, best thing that I can do.
Sorry, I haven't been meaning to distract here, but I thought it'd be really funny to sign up for this and give it a try, and it's it's really fun. I think there are other free GPT-3 chatbot. There you go. Oh, is there a Ask Reddit? I don't want to ask Reddit. Let's try Emerson. I bet you it's mobile. That's probably why. Anyway.
Driver's license. Open up a bank account using that driver's license. Cash out at the ATM. Good. No idea where to get a fake ID. Not a clue. So I get online, looked around, spent a couple weeks looking around. Thought I found a guy. He went by the screen name of Fake ID Man. Thought I found a guy, sent him $200, sent him my picture. Dude rips me off. And I'm like what the hell, man? Oh, I got played. He had a little website set up with reviews, and I'm like, oh, it's all legitimate. Yeah. It's building that trust that I talked about. So the end result, I got pissed, and there was no site that dealt with anything criminal or cybercrime related. The only real avenue you had was an IRC chat session, internet relay chat, and that I'm sure you've been on that. It's this rolling chat board. You don't know who the hell you're talking to. Most of them are full of shit. You can't trust anybody, and you're sitting there trying to conduct business. So, if somebody claims they...
Dudes, IRC is like the OG internet. Like, before, pages were a thing, and there weren't really, there were embedded chat applications for, Yahoo, but, this was before, instant messaging applications like ICU and ICQ, MSN Messenger, etc. So IRC was the fucking bomb. That's where you got to get any pirated material. If you wanted movies, I used to have a friend who was literally the upload source for Family Guy. He would stay up, wait till the show was on. He would encode it on the fly from his from TV to his computer, and he would upload it to IRC, and then it would spread from there. So it's still around to this day.
They've got a product or service. Do they have it? Does it work? Or are they just going to rip you off? Because in those channels, everyone's a criminal. I kept looking around.
Sorry, I'm going to keep looking for chat
upon a website called Counterfeit Library. And Counterfeit Library only dealt with counterfeit degrees and certificates, as on a degree mill type stuff. But they had a forum, and no one was using the forum. So I basically get on there and bitch every day. I got ripped off, don't know what to do, bam, 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 bam. About the same time I start doing that, 2 other guys show up. One's named Mr. X. He's out of Los Angeles. The other guy's named Beelzebub. He's out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And we all become buddies. So, a few weeks of me bitching, a few weeks of them responding. Beelzebub gets me on ICQ, and he sends me a message. He's like, I went by the screen name of Gollum at that point, Gollum Fun. And he's like, sorry, Gollum, I can make you a fake driver's license. And I was like, well, motherfucker, do it. And he's like, well, I'm going to charge you for it. I'm like, yeah, you are. He's like, I am. I was like, no, you're not. And he's like, look, man, he said, this business, if you're going to do this, you have to trust people or you're going to fail. He said, so I'm going to charge you $200, but I'm going to send you a driver's license. Well, by this point, I'm friends with the people who own Counterfeit Library. We're emailing, chatting, everything else. And I tell him, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send you $200. That way, when you rip me off, I'll have them ban you, and I don't have to deal with you anymore. And he's like, bet. I'm like, okay. So I sent him $200, sent him my picture. 2 weeks later, I get a driver's license. Name is Steven Schwecke out of Ohio. And real guy. Worked at ADP Payroll to this day, works at ADP. Is where the guy works. Got the driver's license. And to me, at that point in time, it was the prettiest thing that I'd ever seen. I'd never seen a fake ID before. I thought it was great. Turns out, looking back, it's like, So,
but it is kind of a strong first step in creating a fake identity.
Very strong. Very strong. So
that was like, Gasco just on the point he made that if you're going to be successful in this, you should have people you trust. Is he right on that?
Oh, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely.
So you have to have, this is like mob.
You have to
have an inner circle that you trust.
I'm sure you've probably heard me say this before. Successful cybercrime, all right? There are 3 necessities to being successful online if you're a criminal. 3 necessities are gathering data, committing the crime, and then cashing it out. All 3 of those necessities have to work in conjunction. If they don't, the crime fails. The problem, and it's a huge problem, is that one guy can't do all 3 things. You've got the people who gather the data, basically the general store salespeople who sell PII, credit card logins, data tools. They'll sell the spoofed phone numbers or the RDPs, stuff like that. A lot of the times, those people don't know how to commit the crime, and those people certainly don't know how to launder the money out, put cash in pocket. So you've got, either because of a skill level, sometimes a geographic location limits what that individual can do. All right, so you have to rely on people who are good in areas where you are not in order for that crime to succeed. And that means you have to trust those people. So what happens with Shadow Crew? All right, so Counterfeit Library is the start. All right. Counterfeit Library transitions over to Shadow Crew. Right before that transition, there's a Ukrainian guy by the name of Dmitry Golubov. He was a spammer at that point in time. He saw what we were doing with Counterfeit Library, and he liked it. He was getting all these credit card details, and this kid, he's a kid. This kid has an idea, and his idea was, I wonder if people would buy stolen credit card details.
It's pretty good Ukrainian Russian accent.
So he picks up the phone. He calls his buddies. They call their buddies. They have a physical conference in Odessa. 150 of these cyber criminals show up. And they launch this idea. This launches a website called Carter Planet, which is the genesis of all modern credit card theft as we know it. All right? And so, remember I mentioned those 3 necessities of cybercrime. Dmitry had all the credit data in the world, and he partnered with all these other Ukrainians who had all this data as well. The problem was that so much fraud had been committed on that eastern side of Europe that every card had been shut down. Even if you were a legitimate card holder and tried to cash it out, you weren't doing it at that point. So again, those 3 necessities: gathering data, committing crime, cashing out. Dmitry had the data. They could commit the crime. They could not put cash in pocket. So we were running Counterfeit Library. One day I get this message, or not a message, one day Script shows up. And he posts, just on the general forum, he posts, hey, I've got credit card data. Give me an address, Give me a burner phone number, wait 5 business days, order whatever you want to. We had never seen anything like that. We were a PayPal fraud and eBay fraud site is what we were, and fake driver's licenses. So and we had, I guess we had 2,000-3,000 members at that point. So the response from the members was, that can't be real. You've got to be law enforcement. It's got to be trying to get us arrested and everything else. Let me backtrack a little bit. So the driver's license that I had got, Beelzebub had an idea. What he wanted to do is he wanted to sell driver's licenses. Mr. X wanted to sell Social Security cards. He made a very passable Social Security card. Me, I had no skill level on that. I knew PayPal fraud and eBay fraud. So Beelzebub was like, tell you what, you be the reviewer. That way you get every product or service that comes in. They'll have to send it to you or let you have access to it. You can learn the entire game. And because you're not selling anything, it gives you legitimacy on the reviews. All right? So I started out as a reviewer, the only reviewer on Counterfeit Library. So over the next year, Beelzebub, turns out he was a pot grower. He goes back to growing pot because he wasn't making shit selling driver's licenses. Mr. X, about a year and a half in, he gets arrested, cashing out cashing out at casinos, doing some shit like that. So I'm the only guy left standing, and I'm at the top of the heap. So, and it becomes this thing where if I review somebody, they make a lot of money. If I don't, you don't do business here. So Script shows up saying he's got this. I'm the only reviewer on site. People think he's law enforcement. First week it goes like that. After a while, I'm like, okay, I got to do something. And I'm scared, man, because I'm like, he may be law enforcement. So I get him on ICQ, and I'm like, hey, you have to be reviewed. He's like, what the hell is that? So I tell him what it is. He's like, you review me. And I was like, yeah, that's the idea. So give him a drop address, give him a burner phone number, wait 5 business days, and I try to hit Dell for $5,000. The order fails. I get back on ICQ. Hey, man, it didn't work. He's like, give me one more chance. I was like, look, I'll give you one more chance, but it's your ass after that. And he's like, one more chance. I'm like, okay. Give him another address, another phone number, wait another 5 business days. Hit Thompson's Computer Warehouse for $4,000, Dell for $5,000. Order goes through, get the products in. I post that review on Counterfeit Library, and literally overnight, we turn from an eBay PayPal fraud site to a credit theft site, and that becomes a lot of money really quickly for members. So we were doing now it's called CNP fraud, card not present fraud. So you hit an online merchant with stolen credit card data. Back then, a fairly experienced fraudster could profit $30,000 to $40,000 a month. Okay, just buying laptops, what have you, and cashing out, put them on eBay for sale and sell them like that. 30 to 40K a month was the profit on that. Script had a lot of buddies. He had people like Roman Vega, these other guys that would sell not just credit card data, but counterfeit physical credit cards as well. We had
counterfeit, not stolen. So counterfeit.
Counterfeit.
That must be tough to do.
So the connections
that must be harder than
it's crazy.
Driver's license.
It's crazy. So on your back. So what BOA initially had, and I became the United States salesperson for BOA. But what he had was he was the first dumps provider in the United States. So on the back of your credit or debit card, there's a magnetic stripe. 3 data tracks on the stripe. There's the first data track is the customer's name. Second data track is the card number / 16-digit algorithm outside of that. That's important. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. Third data track is called indiscriminate data. No one uses it. All right. So what's bought and sold is the second data track. It's called the dump. And the reason that's sold is when you go into a shop, you insert the card or you swipe the card, the only information that's sent out for verification is the second data track. All right, that goes to the processor bank for verification. The first data track, that customer's name, shows up on the screen of the cashier in front of you. So what typically happens is you buy 10 of these dumps, you get 10 counterfeit cards, encode track 2 on all 10 cards. Track 1, you create 1 fake driver's license. Track 1 is just the name of that 1 fake driver's license. That way when you go in the shop, swipe the card, track 2 gets sent off for verification, track 1 shows up on the screen in front of the cashier. If you ever ask for ID, you pull out the fake ID, everyone's nice, warm, fuzzy, you walk out with cameras, Rolex.
And track 1 could be it doesn't have to be connected. It's not connected to track 2.
Not connected at all. All right. That's
man.
one of the
All
big
right.
problems. All right.
Yeah.
So, Script brought a host of technical people into that type of environment,
Not
all
allow-
committing credit card theft. We had proxy providers. We had all these people that were doing this stuff. We start making a lot of money, a lot. And the reason that happens is, again, Script did not have the ability to cash out. So he was reduced to selling things. And at the same time, he's looking for, how do I make more money? All right. The Ukrainians happened upon this thing called the CVV-1 breach, or hack, is what they call it. So what happens is, remember I told you track 2.
This is so weird.
Card
This is the
number,
weirdest interaction I've had.
/ 16-digit algorithm. You got to know the algorithm to encode it so you can swipe the card or take it to the ATM machine. All right, ATM. You got to know it. Now, we were fishing data from hell. I mean, we were doing a lot of fishing. A lot. We were getting pins, we were getting card numbers, but you can't get that algorithm. So the Ukrainians start testing stuff. What they found out was no bank had implemented the hash on track 2. So you take the card number / any 16 digits, it would encode. Take it to the ATM, pull cash out because you got the pin. All right. Started doing that.
Wait. Sorry, I'm trying to understand. So that means, so if there's no are they generating random numbers, or do they have valid numbers for track 2?
No numbers were needed at all, as long as just the track 2 was a complete track 2.
So it's a valid track 2 that doesn't matter. So the pin is the thing that gets you in.
Back then, all right. Back then, what we're talking about is you needed. Typically, today you need a whole track 2. You need that valid track 2. Yeah. All right. You need the 16-digit card number / and then whatever that algorithm is outside of it. Yeah. All right. Back then, none of the banks had implemented that algorithm. So while the algorithm was there, you didn't need it to encode.
Interesting.
So
you can make a lot of money with physical
so
fake
much money that
credit
card
cards,
not present
debit
fraud.
cards.
Card not present fraud, remember I told you, was $30,000 to $40,000 a month. Yeah. All right. That turned into $30,000 to $40,000 a day. Yeah. The Ukrainians, again, they can't cash it out. They've got all the data on the planet, but they can't cash it out. Those 3 necessities of cybercrime. So the deal became, you have to rely on the Americans. Tell you what, we'll give you 40%. So you had all these cashiers that were 40% of $40,000 a day. Yeah, we'll take that. All right. Send the rest of it over to, by Western Union or what have you, to your Ukrainian contact. That's before cryptocurrency came into play. Now, you had a couple of forerunners with e-gold and Liberty Reserve, things like that. But back then, it starts out with Western Union. Then it becomes prepaid cards, sending track information over, loading the card up like that. And then finally, you get to e-gold, Liberty Reserve. And today, it's with crypto. That's used.
Okay.
Started stealing a lot of money. A lot. And that got law enforcement attention. So we started to see, I mean, just it's crazy.
It's an AI chat bot that I've just been like asking it like the most absolutely bizarre questions.
We started to see IPs coming in from law enforcement agencies, government agencies, because back then they didn't know how to shield their identity either. So you saw Secret Service, you saw DOD,
Wow,
you saw all these like, and you're like, that's interesting. So, and at the same time, we had, it was called a hack, but it wasn't a hack. We had a guy that worked at T-Mobile in Los Angeles. This is the same guy that back then published Paris Hilton's phone contact list. That made a lot of news. Not only did he do that, but it turned out that the Los Angeles Secret Service Agency was using T-Mobile phones. So he's getting text messages of the Secret Service investigating Shadow Crew. And he posts those damn things on Shadow Crew. So I'm sitting there going, head of the pile. I'm sitting there going, this is not going to end well. This is not going to end well. So at the same time, I had access. I started out with access to the Indiana State Sex Offenders Registry. And I was using that to create bank accounts, launder the money out, and I would sell the bank accounts, stuff like that. They shut that down. The next database I had access to was the Texas driver's license database, and started using that to create fake driver's licenses, what have you. And then finally, we happened upon the California Death Index. All right. Complete information. Mother's maiden,
Oh, that would be really cool.
DOBs, all that. And it's like, got to be a use for that. Well, you can use it to create identities.
That's Linux for you right there.
My idea
what was it? What did you have to do?
I wonder if you could take somebody that's died and then file for Social Security death benefit, not death benefits, but Social Security benefits for that individual and get that recurring paycheck in. So that takes a lot of research to start seeing if you can do that. How does the federal government know if you're dead? Do federal indexes reference state indexes? Got all these questions that pop up. Well, it turns out federal indexes don't reference state indexes. It's against the law. So it also turns out the only way the federal government knows you're dead is prior to 1998, the family had to file a Social Security death benefit for that person. All right? Wow. Prior to 98.
Which of course, most people don't.
Right. Prior to 98, it took the family. After 98, the hospital can do it, funeral home can do it, or the family can do it. So a lot more people have it filed after if they've died.
But it's still, there's a lot of people
probably. Still a lot of holes
because
there.
Because that death benefit's only like $219.
That's fucking crazy.
Okay? Nobody's thinking about that shit. So I started to apply for Social Security benefits. Nope. Number's dormant. So they want you to come in for this
exactly. Finding the right person who had the exact same problem that I did and some wonderful soul who took me to the solution.
Wonder if you could file income tax returns.
This is really loud.
Turns out you can. All day long. So I started doing that. And I started to steal once I got ramped up, because you test everything. You know, you're testing to make sure you got to figure out what the deposit instrument is and everything else. And once you get all that lined out, I started to steal $160,000 a week, every week for 10 months out of the year.
By paying taxes.
By filing fake
filing fake tax returns.
So you find a business, and the way the system worked is the IRS will issue a refund on somebody before they're able to verify that that person works for an employer. Still works like that today. All right, so...
And you're keeping the amounts relatively low.
Keep them at $3,000. All right. Amounts are very low.
But you're still able to achieve scale because this is large index of real
I got to where, and I was manual. Later on, a couple of buddies of mine went automated with it.
Wait, you were doing this by hand, so there's no code involved?
All manual.
Wow.
I'd file a return once every 6 minutes, work 10 hours a day, 3 days a week.
So typing fast and clicking.
One return every 6 minutes.
Wow.
That's changing IP. That's changing address, everything else. One return every 6 minutes. For 3 days a week. Fourth day, I would take a road trip, plot out a map of ATMs, and then the next 2 days, cash out. Bam, 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 bam. All right. Come back home, rinse and repeat. Turns out that a backpack, I don't see any sitting around here, but a backpack will hold $150,000 of 20s is what it'll hold. So I'd put $150K in 20s in a backpack. I had a spare bedroom. I'd come in, toss the backpack in the bedroom.
This is very, very important information, and the fact that you know it is also very. Yeah. First, we started with a volume of coal that weighs a ton, and now a backpack holds $150,000 of 20s, and then you can multiply that by 5 for hundreds.
Yeah,
I like
it's 20. Most of the time, it's 20. It's coming out of the ATM, right?
That's
each 20
true.
weighs a gram.
Each 20 weighs a gram.
So you can actually go by weight, which is what federal authorities do when they get a pallet of cash. They just weigh it.
Oh. They just weigh it.
So
Okay.
150K is 7.5 keys of cash.
Right, let's talk.
That's pretty light.
Not bad. Not bad.
Did you get a big backpack? Do a good run with David Goggins with it?
Yeah.
Nice. I like it.
So,
the fact this is great. So wait, where does that come in with the backpack?
So what happens is I didn't know how to launder money. All right, so I'm throwing cash in the spare bedroom. One day you open up the bedroom and you're like, got to do something with those backpacks. Yeah. And that's when you start learning how to launder money. Cash-based businesses, things like that. I had a production company, had a couple of detailing company. I was thinking about going into food trucks, things like that in Charleston.
Actually, can you pause on that to take a tangent there? How does money laundering work? I mean, at that time, and what years are we talking about?
This
here with
is
Shadow?
by the time the tax return schemes go into play, we're talking 2002, 2003 is when tax returns start.
And so, what at that time, and what you're aware of now, how it evolved? How does money laundering work?
It's not that much different. It's really not. You get a cash-based business, start laundering the money or putting the money through that, saying the transactions are legal. You then start depositing into bank accounts. From the bank accounts, my thing is have bank accounts in the United States, Mexico, Canada, and then finally bounce over to Estonia was the final destination of all this stuff. And the idea is to try to move them to so many places that by the end of the day, it looks legal and you can't trace it all if you're ever caught, which you ultimately are. But so cash-based businesses,
So when you say, sorry to interrupt, the cash-based businesses, so you have money that needs to be moved to other people. So how does that work? What's the business? Are people providing you a service and you're giving them money?
Right. So you do the Ozark thing if you want to do that. So you can gamble, cash out something like that. So there are trips to whatever casinos you've got. You've got your production company or your detail company. So how many cars are you cleaning a day? How many companies have you got to do that? All right. Whatever that company is, it's got to be cash-based. Somebody's paying you in cash is what you're doing. You have to have enough of those cash-based businesses where it doesn't look funny. All right, because if you're a detail company making $100,000 a month, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you start depositing into that. Well, because of the Patriot Act, suspicious activity reports, SARS, came in at $2,500 instead of the $10K that it used to be. So all of a sudden you've got multiple bank accounts that you've got to set up. All right. Fortunately, what you also had is you had a bunch of prepaid debit cards that were coming into play at the same time. So a combination of bank accounts, prepaid debits that had ACH abilities attached to those as well, and you start running them all together. Then once it's out of the United States, you don't have to worry as much. You can start funneling that into fewer bank accounts until finally you've got the one main account that's over at Bank Latico in Estonia at that point. That's what you've got.
So a bunch of hops that end up at a place that you can't trace.
And to give you an idea, I was arrested February 8th, 2005. My last seizure was 2010. Got the last seizure notice. So took them. They got it, but it took them that long to get to it.
So how do stories like with Script that come into play here, where he had someone who owed him money kidnapped and tortured? So when does it turn darker?
It turns darker when the more money you make. Script was a kid that he was stealing enough money that he was able to buy whatever estate he wanted to, and he would brag about touring the countryside, and if he saw property that he liked, he would buy it. And that was not just a brag, he was doing that. So this kid is stealing a lot of money. At the same time, he's got connections politically because of his family. He's got connections, and that family's got connections with the Ukrainian mob. All right? So he's got these inroads, and people are looking out for him, and he's stealing a lot of money at the same time. Somebody doesn't pay him a decent amount of money. Somebody doesn't pay him. Now, we had never, with Shadow Crew, with Carter Planet, with Counterfeit Library, we were basically the geeks. All right? We were just the fraudsters, the social engineers. We had never really considered violence. The rules that I had in play were, hey, we don't do child pornography, we don't do counterfeit currency, we don't do drugs. And the only thing we ended up really obeying was the child porn stuff, except for Max Butler, who you mentioned earlier. Script, someone rips the guy off, and he comes online on Shadow Crew at that point, and he posts these pictures one day. And I mean, it was a detailed narrative through the pictures. Had the guy that rammed in the van, had the door open, rammed in the van, had the guy tied up, had the guy being tortured, and the response was, "This is what happens when you steal from me." And that's the first time that violence came into play at that point. And that's when you start realizing things are getting a little serious.
That's when,
How did that make you feel?
The first response is, can't be real. He's just doing that. You know, he's wanting to send a message. Then you're like, no, that's real. That's real. And
were you afraid in your own heart that you might descend to that too? Like if you see that, or was it pretty clear to you that that's a line that some people can cross and some can't, and you're not one of those that can cross it?
You know, I got to tell you, I joke with my wife. The joke I tell my wife is, you know, if I knew some guy that had 8,000 Bitcoins, I might be persuaded to ask him for access to that. And she was like, how? And I was like, well, hammer and toes.
Yeah.
And I say that as a joke, but there's that line where you're like, I remember who I used to be. And if you're looking at that kind of money, I might be persuaded to do that back then. You know, that's, and I think was Scripps' issue, is it was a lot of money to him.
It's the money. And then there's, you know, violence can also be gradual. So over time you do a little more,
Always.
a little more, a little more.
You get used to what's going on, and then like
get desensitized.
And you figure, you take somebody like Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road guy. All right, Ross was not a violent guy. He was not. But at that point in time, you know, he was sitting on 24 million in Bitcoin. He was the only game in town. Jesus. And that 24 now is like, I don't know, 22, 24 billion, some crap like that. But he felt in danger of this guy was going to turn him in. You know, it was blackmailing him and everything. So Ross thinks he hires a couple hitmen to kill the guy. So it becomes that thing, and I saw that over and over again. And I'd like to say I wasn't like that, but given the same circumstances, I would have probably done the same thing.
And also, when it's not just about money. There's a lot of other forces. Like if you're threatened,
there's your family that's involved too, right? Like if someone comes after your family, you might react a little bit more defensively, or if they're at risk of being exposed, you know, to the byproducts of your criminal activity.
For your well-being, or for your wealth, or for your power. All of us operate under different motivations.
Plus, that online aspect with those communities like that, if you're the head guy, you really feel like you're the parent of these guys.
Yeah.
So if somebody's starting to threaten them, it's like, all right, what do I need to do?
So what do you make of Silk Road? So the Shadow Crew started something that today you can call darknet and darknet markets. So these markets that operate, that trade things, everything from child pornography to drugs to, I mean, what else?
Weapons, guns.
What are the dark things that humans want to do that they don't want anyone to know about? All of those things.
Right.
So can you maybe tell me, you know what, let's just even step back. What is the darknet? How big is it? So what happens there?
Let's backtrack a little bit more before we get to that. All right. What Shadow Crew did, other than, you know, dealing in all these stolen wares, what Shadow Crew did that's really important. Remember those 3 necessities that I talked about. But the important thing is it established trust among criminals. All right, because that's a necessity. You have to be able to trust who you're dealing with, because you have to deal with somebody. You have to. All right. So how do you know you're not dealing with a cop? How do you know you're dealing with somebody that's skilled? How do you know you're going to deal with somebody that's not going to rip you off? You have to be able to trust that individual. The Shadow Crew provided that trust mechanism for criminals. You had that communication channel, the forums, where you could reference conversations weeks, months old, take part, learn from those conversations. Mm-hmm. You had vouching systems and review systems in place, escrow systems in place. You knew by looking at someone's screen name if you could trust the individual, network with the individual. All right, and that community of just humans provided that backbone of trust, and that's really interesting when you think about it. You had the trust that was there, but you also had this almost this instantaneous information that was available about the community or about cybercrime at large. And that's still in play today. All right. So when that was the way things were until a couple of things happened. And one was cryptocurrency. The other one was the Tor browser, the dark web. Now, I was working with the Secret Service, ripping the Secret Service off when Tor comes into play. All right, so we got a memo in one day, and it was talking about the Tor browser, and it was like, we really need to be careful with this. This is going to be a problem. And so we all fired up the Tor browser, and it turns out this was 2005, early 6. Turns out it was completely unusable. Could not use it at all, simply because no one was using it, and it was extremely slow.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
So for people don't know, Tor browser is a way to be completely
relay
anonymous.
networks to run.
as long as you properly know how to use it.
Right.
Huge caveat.
Yeah.
All right. So developed by the United States Navy, and they developed
I know
it.
this. I
Yeah.
did not.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't the hackers that. Interesting.
U.S. Navy. To this day, the number one funder of Tor, military. To this day. All right.
Interesting. I mean, the same, I guess, with the internet. The origins are
So
DARPA
and
and
it was
DoD.
developed so that operatives could communicate with each other without being identified.
Yeah.
All right. That then goes open source. They release it. EFF comes in, starts sponsoring it, everything else like that. The next idea was, well, people can get around their country's firewalls. Whistleblowers can use it, things like that. Well, someone forgot to mention that the first adoptees of tech, if you can use it to launder money or remain anonymous, are criminals. And so criminals start to use the damn thing.
Big time.
All right. So along the same time, a few years later, we get Satoshi Nakamoto pops up
Give me 1 sec, guys.
with his ideas for Bitcoin. And then Ross Ulbricht runs with it. Ross Ulbricht decides he's going to start up Silk Road. So initially, the people who were using Tor, which later is the dark web, people who were using Tor were just talking with each other, visiting websites, communicating like that. Someone figured out, hey, man, we could host websites on this thing, and they have a lot of trouble finding the box. So that is the advent of Silk Road all of a sudden. Ross Ulbricht has this idea that he's going to change the world by becoming the largest drug dealer on the planet. So he opens up the Silk Road, and the only payment instrument he allows is Bitcoin. So if those people out there are wondering why Bitcoin is going at, 44K today?
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts
And by
out.
the time this is out, it could be 100,000 or
Absolutely.
10,000.
Absolutely.
We'll see.
Who knows? If it's 10,000, I'm going to buy some. So,
Which is a hilarious statement to make because that statement would be ridiculously wrong like 5 years ago, right?
I know.
And people 100 years from now will be laughing. Wait, it was that low?
So, so he only accepts Bitcoin, and that's, of course, the initial use case of crypto is no one wants to admit it today, but the initial use case is we're going to buy a bunch of pot. And we need a way to pay for it. So that's what happens. Ross, it's really interesting to me. If you look at motivations of cyber criminals, the motivations are status, cash, ideology. All right. My guys, all cash across the board, all cash. Ross is ideology. He really believed he was going to change the world. He really did. And I've been fortunate. I actually know the guy who ran Silk Road 2 and have talked to the kid, everything else. And I will tell you that those guys who are motivated by ideology, they are a completely different breed. They really are. It's not, the cash guy, it's low-hanging fruit. The ease of it's hard to stop committing crime. But it's
kind of like that scene in Batman where the Joker's like, I don't give a fuck about money. I'm gonna burn this. Like, gasoline is cheap. Like, it's about chaos. It's about the principles, the ideology, and there are very deep ideologies that run through the hacker sphere. We are going to watch the last couple minutes here, and then I think call it, because it has been a long and fruitful stream. It's been really fun watching these guys talk.
It's much easier for a cash-motivated individual to stop than it is that ideology guy. That Silk Road 2 guy, he's still got it. He's not breaking the law, but you can see it's like he wants to. He wants to. So it's
That's fascinating. That I mean, the worst atrocities in human history are committed with people that operate under ideology. All the other motivations are much weaker.
But you think about it. With Ross, I mean,
oh yeah,
very bright guy. very bright guy. But think about the amount of cognitive dissonance that the guy's got, that he thinks he's going to change the world by running a drug site. I mean, certainly, I mean, could he have changed the world? Yeah. Could he have done it like that? Probably not.
Well, I can steel man those arguments. I listened to quite a few.
Well, I was going to say, if he got an enormous amount of capital and is like, well, I'm putting all this money into social programs, or it's like a literal like Robin Hood situation where like I'm robbing from the rich and I'm, giving all this money to the poor, that might work. But I don't think that was necessarily his model for, improving or changing the world.
Libertarians, and you could push that to anarchists, and there's a lot of people that argue. So I actually talked to a professor at Columbia who actually argues that all drugs should be legalized, and not at a philosophical level, political level, but the fact that all the negative consequences of drugs that people talk about actually have to do with other factors in your life.
I would agree with that.
And so,
Ocelot, were you first off? Have you seen? Where is it here? Have you seen this video?
Unreal Engine 5 was...
We watched it earlier in the stream. I don't know if you had managed to be around, but this video continues to absolutely blow my mind. But what it was going to show, and I know you've seen this one, is how ubiquitous Unreal is becoming now in like production, and how like these digital sets that the Mandalorian, and I think it's just the Mandalorian using this now. So imagine, you have these incredible like digital vistas that you can set up, and with new applications like Unreal Engine 5, your ability to manipulate things in real time, or just even be able to create like straight up synthetic landscapes, generative celebrities. It's really, really going to like completely change television and video production for sure. Here, I'm gonna... Yeah, this is the one here. Stop me if you've seen this one.
Just released this morning, and it is a game changer. The computer graphic industry will never be the same. Everyone from game developers to movie makers are excited to start using Unreal Engine 5. But you're probably wondering why Unreal Engine 5 is such a big deal. Well, in this video, I'm going to go over 5 reasons why Unreal Engine 5 is a game changer. Number 1 is Unreal's brand new lighting system called Lumen. Since the start of computer graphics, developers have been trying to simulate global illumination. Essentially, global illumination is bounce lighting, which is the extra light that is created from light rays bouncing off of different surfaces. For example, if we have a room with just one light source, which is the window, it doesn't make sense for the room to be pitch black. Instead, light rays from the window will bounce off of the floors and walls to illuminate the entire room indirectly. Movies have been able to use bounce lighting for a while now through the process called path tracing, but it can take a very long time for just a single frame to render. Sometimes these renders can even last for hours. Obviously, this makes it hard to use for video games that require 30 to 120 frames rendered every second. To get around this in the past, game developers have baked global illumination through a process called light baking. Essentially, all the path tracing was rendered before the game is played. This render is then stored in a texture called a light map, which is then overlaid on top of the world to make it look like light is bouncing around in real time, when in reality it's just a pre-rendered texture. But now the problem is that global illumination is not real time. So as soon as I make a change, our light map is no longer in sync. So we have to rebake the entire environment all over again, which is time consuming. This is why Lumen is such a big deal, since it's true real-time global illumination. So right here we have the same scene, but Lumen is turned on, so there is no baked lighting. And notice how as soon as I start to move this chair around, the light updates in real time. We can even play with how much light is coming through the window dynamically. So let's add in a cube, and we can scale this up and slowly start to block off all the light in the room. And then notice how as soon as I move this, we start to seep in more and more light, and this room is entirely dynamically changing its visibility because of all of that bounce lighting, which was near impossible in Unreal Engine 4. The city sample shows off Lumen pretty well. I can rotate my sun and watch all those buildings illuminate each other through their bounce lighting. Even windows on buildings now give off light. For example, if I grab this car and move it from the window, it starts to cast soft shadows onto the concrete. Reason
That's
2
so cool.
is nanite. Every object you see in CGI, whether that be in video games or movies, are comprised of tiny flat planes of geometry called polygons. And generally, the more polygons you have in a world, the longer it takes for a computer to render, which can slow down video games. This is why games use a system called level of detail, or LOD for short. Basically, the further away an object is from the camera, the less polygons it will use to render that object. This makes games run faster since there's less polygons that have to be rendered, but it's a time-consuming process to create all the LODs. Nanite changes this. At a simple level, Nanite allows for dynamic level of detail. This means you can have an object with millions of polygons without any
This part
LODs,
is so cool.
because those
I love
polygons
this.
dynamically deform, lowering the total amount of polys on the object. This allows for high poly assets made for movies to be used in video games now. I think it's best to show an example of why this is a big deal. So right in front of you is a donut I made in Unreal Engine, and this donut is made up of about 30,000 different polygons. Here is that same exact donut, but copied and pasted over 100,000 times. And what is insane is that we're not faking any of these donuts with textures or billboards. All these donuts are individual objects that we can move around, rotate, and scale. Maybe one donut is bigger than all the others. A more practical example is the city sample, which is made up entirely of nanite objects. We can see how nanite works by coming up to lit, down to nanite visualization, and triangles. So every color you see is an individual polygon. And we can see more polygons pop in the closer we get to one of the buildings or to any of those objects. For example, this water tower, if I go away, we can see that the water tower loses polys, but when I come up close, it gains more and more polys. Number 3 is the Megascans asset library. What is the point of great features like Nanite and Lumen if we don't have any objects to populate our world with? This is where Megascans can help us. Megascans is a library of over 16,000 assets ready to be used automatically in Unreal Engine 5. These assets include 3D objects, plants, material surfaces, modular objects, and recently they even added customizable trees. And all these objects are photorealistic because they're scanned from real life. The team at Megascans have flew all over the world, from Japan to Iceland, scanning and capturing different objects and surfaces. Using a program called Reality Capture, these scans are then converted into 3D objects and imported into Unreal. They have been used in movies and TV shows like The Lion King and Mandalorian. What's amazing is that all these assets are free and built into Unreal Engine 5 by default. To get Megascans, all you have to do is click on the add button right here and select Quixel Bridge. Now we get access to those 16,000 assets. So for example, what if we want a rock from the desert? Well, I'm going to select 3D assets to filter for objects and type in desert and then rock. So we see all the different assets that we can choose from. Let's say, for example, maybe I want this asset right here. All you have to do is drag it into your world, wait for it to download, and now we have that object ready to move around and place in our world. They even give us a lot of customizable features, such as changing the color of the rock, or we can even make the rock a lot shinier. So let's get a better angle so the sun is hitting it right here by adjusting its max roughness.
Wow.
So maybe this rock is really wet, so it's really shiny. In fact, this environment I created is almost made up entirely of Megascan assets. From the houses to the foliage, all the way to the cliffs at the very far
Almost
back,
entirely.
they are all from the library. Also, the desert from the Valley of the Ancients demo is entirely made up of Megascan assets. You can pretty much click anywhere on the screen, and odds are you have selected a real-life object that was scanned from the deserts of Utah. Reason number 4 is metahumans. Humans are one of the hardest assets to create for games and movies, especially if you're trying to create realistic humans. It is one of the most expensive parts of any production. This is why metahumans is amazing. It allows us to quickly create realistic humans in minutes, and the application runs on your computer browser, so you don't need to download Unreal Engine to use it. It also comes with a bunch of different preset humans. This is one of the preset humans. You can see that we have just a bunch of options at the left right here. We could go in and sculpt, maybe give him a bigger nose, and also raise the cheekbones. And then we could go into the head, give him different hair, and maybe even add in a mustache. And of course, change the proportions, maybe make him a little bit skinnier. Of course, we could continue using MetaHuman Creator, but what if we want to bring the human into UE5? Well, it's as easy as opening up Bridge and going into the MetaHumans tab, and under My MetaHumans, you see all the humans you have created. All you have to do is simply download that character and import it into your game. Once you do have it imported, you just have to find where he is under MetaHuman and simply drag it out. It is that easy now to create a realistic human for games and animation. But we're not just limited to a static human. We can animate pretty much everything about this metahuman, including his face. So for example, what if you want to move his mouth down? Just grab it like that, move it. You can also move his eyes, so you can see him looking in game. And keep in mind, all of these are animatable, so you could create an entire animation. We can even change his body's pose.
I really wish I had like any
arms,
artistic ability,
and
because I would love to like fuck
animate
around
him
in
waving
Unreal Engine.
if you are good with animation. The Matrix Unreal Engine 5 demo is a great example of the power of metahumans. All the humans, from the player character to the pedestrians walking the street, are metahumans. Even Keanu Reeves is a customized metahuman. Instead of using the metahuman application, artists scan Keanu Reeves' face and then use the metahuman technology for the materials, rigging, and animation. So if you are a technical artist, you can still make use of metahuman in a more traditional pipeline. You're not just limited to what is possible in the metahuman editor. Number 5 is surprisingly Unreal Engine 4. You probably noticed that what you see on the screen right now is not Unreal Engine 5. This is a demo of Unreal Engine 4 that was released in 2012, which is a decade ago. The reason why I'm showing this is to demonstrate that UE4 projects can easily be converted into UE5 projects. Now, this is the same demo, but running in Unreal Engine 5, making use of all the new features, such as Lumen and Nanites. So it looks a lot better than it did in 2012. The reason why this is important is because all the content created for UE4 is still relevant and works for UE5. Whether that be tutorials or asset packs, there's already an existing and thriving Unreal ecosystem. For example, there are over 10,000 different asset packs you can buy right now on the Unreal Marketplace, and almost all of them can be converted to UE5. Not to mention, a lot of these assets are free, and new free content is being added every month. Also, almost all tutorials created for Unreal Engine 4 still apply to Unreal Engine 5, which is great for me because that means all my past videos are still relevant. For example, if you want to learn how to create a donut in Unreal Engine, then all you have to do is watch this Unreal Engine 4 video, and it still works for Unreal Engine 5. And if you want to learn Unreal Engine 5, then luckily you are in the right place. I have a free 5-hour long beginner tutorial, which you can watch right now, link in the description below. We go over everything from the basics of Unreal to creating a beautiful environment like the one you see right here. Feel free to check it out if you are interested in learning Unreal. Thousands of people have already completed that course and have started their Unreal journey through it. Also, since UE5 has now officially released, I have a bunch of content, videos, and assets planned for this channel. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe and press the bell icon for notifications. With all that being said, I hope to see you in future videos.
Very cool. Wow, excuse me. Very cool video. Great way to end the stream. Guys, it's been a fun night. We've watched a lot of videos. We covered a lot of content. And as always, I appreciate everyone for coming by, sticking around, saying hello. And next Tuesday, we'll be back on regular schedule with more exciting content. I have no idea what we're talking about next week, but I'm sure it will be fun, entertaining, and also hopefully we'll learn a little bit of stuff together. So guys, until next time, keep it real, keep looking at the stars, and I'll see you guys when I see you.